2024 Indian River Lagoon Council meeting where good things always happen. It's good to see everybody here today. It is, what time? 9:35. So we had a little meeting before the meeting. We will start, if everybody would please rise, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Why don't we start off with just the introduction of the council here. We'll start all the way down on my left and just tell us who you are and where you're from.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Chris Zadowski. I represent District 1 in St. Lucie County, and damn glad to be here.
Good morning, I'm Libby Pigman. I represent the South Florida Water Management District, and I'm the External Affairs Director for South Florida Water Management District.
Hello, Aaron Watkins with the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. I'm the Central District Regulatory Office Director.
Joe Ehrman, Indian River County Commissioner, District 3, and glad to be here also.
Right. Jeff Brower, Volusia County Chair.
Good morning, I'm Stacy Hetherington, District 2 County Commissioner for Martin County, and it's lovely to be here.
Doug Bornigue, St. John's Water Management District. Rob Feltner. I don't think, oh, no.
Great. Just a couple of other announcements of notable people. We've had Jennifer DeMeo, who is the Region 4 EPA liaison to the IRL NEP, join the management board meeting on Tuesday this week. Is she here today?
Actually, Mr. Chair, Jennifer couldn't travel this week. She had gotten sick, but she was listening in.
Great.
And I think she's listening in
well,
right now.
We welcome her. We're really glad to have her on the management board. But I think joining us today, we do have Becky Allen back. Oh, good morning, Becky. She's the Senior Advisor to the Director of South Florida Program Water Division, EPA Region 4. Would you like to say anything to the board before we start?
Sure.
We would love to hear from you.
I'm very happy to be here in person. I've been participating in these meetings remotely, but it's nice to be able to be here in person. I am in the Water Division of EPA's office out of the Atlanta office, but I am actually stationed over in Sarasota. I'm a native Floridian, but I've worked for the Environmental Protection Agency for 30 years. Happy to be back in Florida. Grew up fishing with my dad in the St. Johns River. So like I said, I'm just really happy to be here and work with you on your issues. I'm also a member of the policy board, co-chair for the policy board of the Sarasota Bay Estuary Program. So I bring the perspective from that side of the state as well, and looking forward to helping you guys in whatever way I can. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. Agenda. Does anybody on the board have any revisions to the agenda? Staff? No? We have a motion to approve the agenda. Is there a second? Second. And all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Are you catching all the? Very good. Resolutions, recognition, anything further from staff?
Nothing today, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Did you get any cards for public comment and nobody online? That's unusual.
Mr. Chair, I did get a text from Captain Blair Wiggins, who's been doing some of the work with St. John's on clam restoration. He was running late and also suffering, he thinks, from a little heat exhaustion from yesterday's temperatures on the water. So if he comes in, we'll have him fill out a card and maybe we can accommodate. He wanted to make a few statements to the board, but I'm not sure he'll make it.
Oh, That would be great. In my closing comments, I've got some interesting news about clam restoration too, but I'm going to hold it till then. No public comment. Well, we'll go to our water quality reports. If we could start with the Northern and Central Lagoon, Lauren Hall, St. John's. Please give us a good report.
Good morning, members of the board. I'm here to present the most recent water quality conditions report for you, as well as update you on some of our preliminary seagrass maps. Just a reminder, we have 6 stations spread throughout the lagoon with continuous monitoring stations. Mosquito Lagoon, one in Titusville, just north of the 406 Causeway. We have a site in Cocoa, a site in Banana River Lagoon, north of 520 Causeway, a site at O'Galley, just outside of the O'Galley River, and then a site down in Vero, just north of State Road 60. These sites are maintained by St. John's River Water Management District staff, and they record data hourly. So getting into some of that data, these are the depths for the last few months, and you can see that there is not a whole lot of fluctuation. This is fairly normal for this time of year. The one thing I do want to point out is the site that is in Cocoa that you see in green. It looks like there's a dramatic drop in the depth there, but really what that was is an instrument malfunction. We had some corrosion on the chain that is holding the instrument, so we'll have that back to the correct depth level fairly soon. Okay, getting into salinity, we have seen a slight increase in salinity across most of our stations. The one notable dip that you see at the O'Galley site is during a rainfall event that we had the weekend of April 21st, and that seems to come back up just as quickly as it dropped. Temperature has been increasing as our air temperature gets warmer. I think today's supposed to be in the mid-90s. This is very typical. We see the temperature increase this time of year and nothing out of the ordinary. Our dissolved oxygen has been between about 5 and 10 milligrams per liter. Anything that drops below 2 milligrams per liter is problematic for the invertebrates and fish species out there, so we keep a close eye to make sure that we don't have anything dropping below 2. Just a reminder, as we get into summer and those water temperatures warm up and we have those higher salinities, the warmer water can't hold on to oxygen as well as colder water, so we do watch it even more closely over the summer when we tend to have more hypoxic events. Getting into the parameters that affect the amount of light penetration in the water, chlorophyll A is a good indicator of whether or not we have any phytoplankton blooms going on out there. You can see from these figures that there's really not a whole lot of activity, so that's good news. We have not had any big bloom events. And the little tick up that you see in Titusville at the very end in turquoise may be a bloom. It's hard to tell. We have been having some fouling issues on this instrument, so next time we're out there doing maintenance, we'll be able to confirm and do all of our verifications on the calibrations to be able to tell whether or not that is the start of something brewing. Turbidity, just to point out that the site at Mosquito Lagoon in orange has a different scale. Mosquito Lagoon tends to kick up very quickly because it is very shallow. The turbidity conditions, whenever we see these spikes, it's usually driven by either a rainfall event or a wind event. We have had some wind events over the course of this time period, so it's pretty typical to see that, but it usually settles out very, very quickly. And then our FDOM, since we've not had a lot of rain recently, we are seeing a drop in FDOM, which is an indication of the amount of color in the water. So we've been seeing that decline, which is good. Just another way to look at water clarity. These stations are taken from our grab samples that we do at our routine sites every month. These are indicating the Secchi depth, so the amount of distance that you can see the Secchi in the water column. So your red dots are low Secchi depth, and your turquoise is over 1.5 meters. So you can see that since February, March, and then now in April, we are seeing an improvement in water clarity. So especially in the central IRL and throughout Banana River. So the water clarity is very good out there right now. Okay, so now getting into seagrass. This is just a reminder of where we were. So from 2009 to 2021, we did see that this large decline in seagrass extent, which is shown with the green bars. The mean transect length is from our in-water monitoring. Those always track each other very well because they're both measuring the footprint of seagrass, so out to that deep edge. You can see that in 2021, we were at our lowest seagrass extent, just over 8,000 hectares. Fast forward to 2023. This is preliminary data. We will be releasing these maps in about a month or so out to the public, but just wanted to show you a little bit of a sneak peek. We have seen an almost 2,000 hectare increase in 2023 from 2021. However, that increase is not throughout the entire lagoon. So I have it here broken into sub-lagoon, and you can see that the biggest increases were in the northern section of the lagoon in Mosquito Lagoon and a little bit in northern IRL. Some of these numbers might change slightly once we finalize the maps, but generally it's gonna be the same trend. So even though we're seeing these large increases in the northern lagoon, we are seeing a little bit of a decline in the southern lagoon. But I want to caution you to not read too much into those numbers because the aerial photography is, because it's difficult to pick up the really small seagrasses like our Halophilus species, they're only a couple of centimeters tall and tend to grow in deeper water. This may be an underestimate of how much seagrass is out there. We're probably losing a little bit more of our denser canopy species, but those smaller species are still present in a lot of areas. And I just wanted to briefly touch on rainfall. So if you recall my last presentation, I mentioned that we had a lot of rainfall in December and January. That trend continued into February, where we did see large rainfall throughout February until about the very end. At the end of February, it seemed like our rainfall just stopped. And since then, we've seen very little rainfall. This is showing March and then April. So you can see in the Melbourne area, that's that little blip that I showed you at O'Galley, where we had that rainfall event the end of April. That's what you see here. And that's all I have for you. I'd be happy to take questions.
Questions?
Just a comment. Being a surfer and a boater and a diver, I've lived in Florida a long, long time, and this year has been one of the windiest, scuddiest years, just as a guy who loves to be on the water. The wind is blown and it's been overcast, just blustery, windy. It's stirring up the river type of weather. And I'm amazed that grasses have done as well as they have with the scuddy weather we've had really starting in late December. Because I try to go offshore a lot or over to the Bahamas, and I just couldn't do it for months. All of January, all of February, all of March. Finally, we're getting some normal Florida weather this last 10 days, but it's been just one of those winters where things are just being resuspended in Lake Okeechobee and in the Indian River Lagoon just because they're shallow and you have loadings that just continue and the turbidity is constantly high. So hopefully that ends and the grasses do better, but I'm amazed that they actually increased with that type of weather system that we've had with La Nina.
Our field team feels your pain because
Yeah.
it's been tough to get all their work done with these windy conditions, and you're exactly right. I mean, it seems different this year than the last several years. It seems definitely like we've had a lot more wind than typical.
Yeah, it has been. I've lived in Florida since 1959, and I haven't remembered a winter like this. Just a pain in the you-know-what for me.
At our last meeting, there was probably not unexpected, but a pretty significant decline in seagrass in the Mosquito Lagoon. It looks like from your graph that there's a good recovery. Is that the case?
So the figure is showing the 2023 seagrass mapping. So that decline that I talked about that we saw for winter is a decline in percent cover, but hopefully we're not seeing a decline in that footprint in the extent. So we're going to be out there doing our in-water monitoring starting in June. So we'll get a better feel from that. But from what we've just observed without actually doing the transect and taking the data, the conditions look very good, and we are seeing some increases in northern Banana River Lagoon as well in seagrass.
Good.
We're also seeing a lot of manatees in that area. A lot of times where you can see the manatees, we know that there's grass there.
Yeah.
They find the groceries.
Well, I'll be out there Tuesday and Wednesday, so I'll let you know what I see. But
Great.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes.
I gotta think that the transformational projects that South Florida, Drew Bartlett and his staff have done with dispersed storage projects and holding water out of the southern lagoon trying to reduce as much as they can the C-44 discharges. And with the St. John's we've done here in reversing flows from going east back to the St. John's River and into the marsh. Finally, with all those projects, and they're really just been done in the last 4 or 5 years and come to fruition, I think we're finally turning the corner on the health of this lagoon, and it took moving a mountain to do that. It's just a lot of projects. The lagoon's so big and so long. We have a lot more work to do, but I think all those massive discharges, little by little, all the way up from New Smyrna down to Jupiter, are paying off finally in a big way. I'm seeing it when it's not windy. I'm seeing it just where I boat, and I boat a lot. And one thing about having a smaller boat, you use it a lot. And I'm on the river a lot, going after redfish, snook, you name it. I'm seeing better conditions and more fish around than I've seen in a long time. So we need to keep moving forward, and what's been done here by Dwayne and the staff is remarkable, and by South Florida and Drew Bartlett and Mike Register at St. John's is great. But one of the most important projects of all is sitting on the governor's desk, and that's the reconnection of St. John's and South Florida, where we can move from western St. Lucie County into the St. John's Marsh 150,000 to 200,000 acre feet of water that would go to the lagoon and is going to the lagoon currently. And that project's sitting on the governor's desk, and I would encourage anybody who knows the governor or feels comfortable to communicate to the governor to approve that purchase as a $400 million purchase of Groveland. The options are, in my humble opinion, probably are rooftops. There's 40,000 rooftops. I serve on the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, and I just got off being chairman. If you look at the math of the homes that are approved down in Tradition area, there's 40,000 rooftops coming in that region that used to be citrus and grapefruit groves. And I fly that area a lot. When you get up and you see the growth coming out of the Palm Beach County area up into Martin and St. Lucie, it's marching up, and it's massive. And this is our chance, our last great chance to take water that is bludgeoning the lagoon and move it north and not east. It's the last big opportunity to do that before those people give up working, trying to make this reservoir happen. They have options, and unfortunately it's probably going to be rooftops. And we don't need any more of that for the lagoon. And Dwayne and the staff don't need that. So anybody who can get to the governor and say, please get this track and move forward with this project. It's the biggest single thing to help this lagoon water-wise and discharge-wise we as a Lagoon Council can do. There's nothing bigger. The Groveland, it's a Groveland project, and it's on the governor's desk. He has put a line item in the governor's budget of $400 million to purchase this and start the engineering of this project. And I don't want to put Dwayne on the spot, but I think we all know when you get up in a plane and you look what it would impact the Indian River Lagoon, I don't know of a bigger, more influential project to save this lagoon from that much discharge. The C-44 is the biggest, and the Martin County folks have done a remarkable job bringing it to the attention. I was at the South Florida board meeting yesterday in Stewart, and they have done a remarkable job taxing themselves, bringing up to that governing board that C-44 discharge is killing that whole estuary, and they're getting a lot of attention and a lot of things done with dispersed storage projects there. We need to step up and do that further up the lagoon, and this is another project that can move that much water out of the lagoon into the St. John's where we need the water. We need that water. We're growing trees in the Indian River County inside our levee system where there should be water. I'm a golfer and I can hit driver 9-iron and not hit water off of the levee system, and a lot of that levee system, and so we can use that water and hold it and release it downstream where it's needed and wanted, and it's not wanted in our lagoon system. Just so, if you can, please contact the governor's office or urge him to not veto that and to support the Groveland project. It will help St. Lucie County, it will help the Indian River Lagoon, and will help the upper basin of the St. Johns and all the animals that reside in the lagoon and in the upper basin. Thank you.
Tremendous words. That's a great idea. I would ask you Doug, if you would be willing to make a motion that maybe staff craft a letter from the council to send to the governor with all of our signatures asking him to approve that.
I'd be happy to. I'd like to get Dwayne, your opinion on that. Can I put you on the spot, Dwayne? I'd love to do that.
I don't mind being on the spot, Mr. Chair and Board. If you remember back in August of last year, we actually passed a resolution supporting the concept of a large dispersed water management project, and you were briefed on that Groveland project. Typically, and I can only think of one time in our 8 years have I weighed in after the House and the Senate send a budget to the governor's office. You know, we really have not engaged in direct communication with the governor's office for or against any line item in the budget. However, I did send that resolution to the governor's office once the budget was finalized without any endorsement one way or the other, but to put on the record that you all as council back in August last year recommended the concept. And so we're here to serve you, so whatever you would like us to do, we'll follow through. But I know that a lot of us, you know, haven't had a chance to look at what that 400 million on the line item is. And so that's getting kind of in the granular details where I start to get nervous for you as a collaborative council who have made, you know, basically our basis has been, you know, don't get into individual projects, regulatory issues, you know, or development issues. So, but I'll do whatever you instruct us to do, and I'm happy to write, you know, a letter if you want to go that direction. But I do think you need to have that conversation at the board level today.
Okay, and it sounds like your recommendation might be more powerful for each of us to reach out individually, as Doug had suggested. Before you answer that, do you know how that 400 million is funded? Is it Florida Forever or is it direct purchase?
I have no idea.
We need to know that. So.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
My recommendation would be, I agree with Mr. Bernique on this. We've talked about this, about moving water west and north and for a long time, even up in Indian River County. And I think that was one of our concerns. We want to see how this would affect all the counties and, you know, be a part of a project. I would ask Dr. DeFries to maybe research this, and I think we bring it back to the next meeting and we can do it then. He can have the paper ready for us to sign, but I think what you asked is very good. We need to know where the money is, where it's shaking, where it's going, and where it's coming from.
That would be too late.
It'll be too late.
Way too late. We need to, if you're going to have an impact, it's got to be pretty quick. It's, you know, we only meet quarterly, so yeah,
We can do it in an email, I mean.
yeah, Mr.
Just
Chairman,
a matter of process. Once that budget gets sent to the governor's office, and correct me, agencies, if I don't have the time, I think there's a 30-day window for the governor to execute his authority to veto or not veto. I am not sure whether that budget has been formally brought to the governor's desk yet, but there's a timeline, and that has to be done by the end of June prior to July 1.
Okay.
And so if you want a correspondence from council to the governor's office, this is the only opportunity to give staff that direction.
Could
Chair?
we be so bold, Mr. Chairman, as to maybe, with everybody's approval, I don't want to make any of the other groups here uncomfortable, but maybe if we, as a board, ask Dwayne to resend our resolution with the support from the Lagoon Council that this will help our lagoon, something general, Dwayne, like that? Would you feel comfortable, and would the rest of the board members feel comfortable with that? I think it's, again, it's the biggest, Dwayne will, I think, I hate to put you in the spot, but I think this is the biggest single thing we can do to take water out of this lagoon that we know of currently. There's no other project that comes close to removing this volume of water to save the animals in the lagoon and provide water to other needs in the state of Florida.
Well, let's see what the rest of the council thinks. One thing that I will do, Doug, is when I go back, I'm going to ask the Volusia County Council, because St. John's runs right through them. It's really important to our county. I'm going to ask our council to send a joint letter.
It's a lot of water, and
it's
it's
a
a
lot of
lot of
water.
good water. And where this water is coming from, it's not an urban area. If you get up in a plane, I fly with citrus growers a lot in single-engine planes to look at groves. Some of these planes are a little old, but I fly around a lot. And when you take a view of coming off of the upper St. Johns Basin, and when you hit Indian River County's south line and you see the wooded area of western St. Lucie County, it's one of the most beautiful forested areas left south of State Road 60. It's a gorgeous area that a lot of wealthy South Floridians are buying up for their ranches, and there isn't much out there. You can't get a more pristine area south of State Road 60, and it's wooded, and it's nice, and it's beautiful out there. And that's that 50-foot ridge that runs from, if you envision on a map, from Indiantown to Yeehaw Junction, there's a 50-foot ridge, and all that water comes off that ridge and wants to go north in western St. Lucie County, all the way down really into northwestern Martin County. The Indians, the old Indian legends said they could canoe from northwestern Martin County all the way to Jacksonville in the old days, before roads and turnpikes and things that blocked it. When it was very wet, you could canoe all that way in the inland waterway. And but mainly this water will come off of western St. Lucie County and 150,000 acre feet-ish, and it wants to flow north, and now it's forced to go into the Indian River Lagoon. And if we reconnect, Drew Bartlett and Mike Register will have the option to call each other and say, well, let's keep this water moving north, or under an MOU, they can say if St. Lucie County needs to replenish the C-Series canal system, I can sign an MOU with Drew Bartlett, and we can move that water back into St. Lucie County, replenishing its water supply, which they can't do now. When they're dry in St. Lucie County, and that's a citrus area, once they get to 14.5 feet, we're cut off. We can, if we engineer this right, we can replenish that canal system. That's only 30,000 acre feet of water, period. That's nothing. Why, we'll be contributing 150,000 acre feet to the good every year, all the time. So it's a winner for the St. Lucie County, it's a winner for the rivers, a winner for the St. Johns River and our lagoon. So there's no downside to this, and it stops mega growth from just devouring what's left of a nice wooded habitat. And it's one of the great wooded habitats that's left in South Florida.
Well, let's hear from the rest of the council. This is obviously very important. You're obviously very passionate about it. One of the things that I tell people when I'm in the public about serving on this board is that it's the most It's what I look forward to the most. I love serving on this council, and the reason is because I serve with some very talented people who, like you just heard from Doug, are very passionate about preserving and protecting the lagoon, and that all of our votes, almost all of them, I can't remember one that wasn't, but they're almost always unanimous. We agree because each of us are passionate, but we're not just thinking emotionally, we're thinking with our minds. I would like to hear from you. We can keep it right where we are, what we've already done, send the resolution, we can resend it, we can ask for a letter, or we can all act on our own. I need to hear from you. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, as Doug was talking, there is the history of the ICE Indians going from St. Lucie County to Jacksonville to the north, to the Panhandle, and so on and so forth. And when 95 and the Turnpike were built, they cut off that flowway, and so it is something that we've been looking at for a very long time. You think you have willing sellers in that area as well. That's always a hard part, specifically for that number of acres. And maybe we look at this a little differently while staying in the box that we've kind of put ourselves in, that Dwayne had stated, is we haven't really gotten into individual issues and so on. But I think a letter that would first recognize the governor's focus on the environmental issues in the state, that which is water quality, and moving to DEP with the septic to sewer and so on and so forth. But his focus on the environment, I think, has been stellar and significant. And I think in a letter, just simply recognizing that and then pointing out that this exists, that it's on his desk, and that he should take a real close look at it, because he gets a lot of bills and a lot of things to look at. But if we raise the attention level that much higher, maybe he'll look at it, have his staff look into it further, and then maybe push that button to the other side, to the yes, and not veto it, because the amount of money that we're talking about today is $400 million. We talk about it all the time. What's the cheapest way of keeping contaminants out of the lagoon? Just don't let it in, right? But there are other areas of the state that need more water. It wasn't that long ago when Governor Scott was in a major battle with Atlanta and Georgia, because they were shutting off the water to Florida, and so the water wars began, right? So if we manage our own water in our own state and handle it that way, and then again take out the significant amount of discharge into the lagoon, that's a huge win. So maybe that's the type of approach we take. Recognizing him and his stellar work in the environment, but then also to suggest that his staff look at it. We've looked at it, and then send a resolution along with it that says, we've looked at this, and here's an opportunity. So
I like that idea.
I do too. I think that's excellent.
Okay.
So I just want to say, I think Dwayne laid out the framework of role of the council, and also process, and the agenda item, and what was accomplished in August. It sounds like we're talking and discussing something that's potentially been done. This not being on the agenda, I'm not familiar with the project, so I would feel uncomfortable voting or tasking Dwayne to do something that I need to research more. I need to know the more details. I respect Doug, what he's saying, but ramifications and decisions, and also concern about circumventing role and process of the board. I think we need to think about that, and I get that we meet quarterly, so the timing is of the essence. So there might be other mechanisms and process, as Doug said, to reach out to the governor, other than having a motion on this at this time. I wouldn't be prepared to speak or act on that.
Okay. Thank you. Libby?
I support that position as well.
Okay.
Well, we've already sent the resolution once, right?
Yes.
That's correct. I sent a copy of the resolution to the governor's office. I don't recall the date, but it's You know, it was at the end of session when the budget was finalized, and we're still, am I correct? Some of you follow this maybe closely. I don't think that budget has been transferred to the governor's desk, and the clock hasn't started. But they do have the resolution. I've sent that directly on behalf of the council because we're on record that we support the concept. And I'll just add, we have never in our history kind of looked at line item appropriations in a specific manner, mainly because there's so many. And so each of your counties, each of the cities have legislative budget requests with line item requests. This one happens to be a $400 million request, quite large. And even with the Indian River Lagoon Protection Program, which was an executive order of Governor DeSantis, and we thank him for that, during this last session, you know, the Senate and the House and their appropriation committees were not, you know, all agreeing to that $100 million line item. And we stand back as a council and not usually engage on that level of granulometry on the, you know, on how much. You know, those are, because once you cross that line in a precedent, we have just changed the way we've been operating and saying that, and we'll have every city, every county, you know, every line item request, our nonprofit saying, well, can you write a letter supporting our 10 million for this or 5 million for that? I'm not sure that's where you all want to be as a collaborative governance body. But that's just my executive, you know, recommendation to you to think about as you deliberate this request.
Well, let's do this. I appreciate that. And I really appreciate you bringing it up, Doug, and giving us that much information. But you're right, it's not on the agenda. And so nobody was really prepared to deal with this. Although I really like Chris's idea. I don't want to put the board in a position to be divided on something, and I sense that you're not completely comfortable with it either. And so I would suggest we're not going to have an opportunity next meeting because it'll be done. So I would just suggest that everybody does the research themselves and handle it the best way you want. I mentioned what I'm going to go back and ask our council to write a joint letter and support this, and we have done that before. So,
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
I have a suggestion. We can, and I'm totally comfortable representing you all, sending a letter saying that we discussed this issue today and that we remind the office that, you know, we have that resolution in concept, but not have any discussion about the line item in the budget, that we're not recommending to the governor, you know, to pass or not pass that budget, but just, again, go on record how important large dispersed water management is both for the Everglades and for the Indian River Lagoon and for the St. John's, and leave it just a generic reiteration of this discussion so we can let the governor know this is on your collective minds in more of a general sense. I can get that out within a day.
This is why you're here today. Thank you.
I move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve what Dr. DeFries just said, and thank you for stepping in. I think that's a great compromise that will actually be effective. So,
And you need to vote.
oh, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And we maintain our unanimity.
I do like Chris's better, though.
I
think
really
it's
like
all in the
Chris.
same. I think it really is the same.
Yeah.
Just simply to, you know, appeal to his sensibility and his environmental examples, and I think that that's important to just raise the attention.
Yeah.
Hey, this is not going to be on your desk. Have your staff look at the value of what it could be, because we haven't studied it. Therefore, what are the benefits of it? To that effect.
Excellent. All right, thank you. Dr. Melanie Parker for the Southern Lagoon report. Let's see what kind of trouble you can get us into.
Most of our monitoring. Data in these following slides is through April 22nd, so it's about a week behind. And if I do reference a 7-day average, that's April 14th through 22nd, I believe. So go ahead and get started. The figure on this slide is showing total daily inflows into the St. Lucie Estuary from each of the basins. And you can see we had some big peaks in inflows in February through March. The bright blue color is what came from Lake Okeechobee. And those flows were started because we had, as you all know, a very heavy rainfall season during the dry season, unexpectedly related to El Nino. The lake level was uncomfortably high, so the Army Corps of Engineers decided to do some releases to bring that lake level down before we get into the wet season. And their plan was to do a 2-week pulsed release, meaning the average for that 2 weeks was going to be at 1,800 CFS per day. Some days it would be higher than that, some days it would be lower. And you can see that they were even able to incorporate in some no release days, some 0 CFS days. And those are very clear on the figure there. We had the first example of that happening in late February. It was about February 27th through March 1st, just giving the estuary a recovery period from those low salinities that result from these high releases. And it happened again in mid-March, about March 14th through 19th, I believe. And then luckily what happened once these releases started is it did help bring lake level down, and also the rains decreased quite a bit in March and April. So they felt comfortable with stopping the releases to the St. Lucie Estuary. And at the same time, they were releasing more to the Caloosahatchee Estuary on the west. They were able to reduce that amount as well. So since that time, on this figure, you can see we've had very little freshwater inflow into the estuary. The table on the bottom right shows the most recent 7-day period where we had a total of just 456 CFS coming in from all of the basins, and most of that came from the C23. So now looking at salinity, the map on this figure shows where our continuous salinity monitoring sites are located in the St. Lucie Estuary. And the table on the top left is showing the average salinity at each of those stations for the most recent 7-day period. So at HR1, which is in the North Fork, we had salinities of 19 on the surface and 21 on the bottom. At the US 1 bridge, salinities were at 23 on the surface and bottom. And at the A1A bridge, salinity was 31 on the surface and 32 on the bottom. The good news is that at HR1 and the US 1 bridge, those salinities fell into the optimal salinity range of 10 to 25 for adult oysters, and that's based on the Recover Salinity Performance Measure. At the A1A bridge, salinities were a bit higher and are in what we consider the higher stressful range of greater than 25. Looking a little bit more closely at salinities, the figure on the top left is just the mean daily salinity at those same 3 stations, and it's for the past couple months. The most important thing to see on this figure is that at the end of March, when those releases from the lake stopped, we've seen salinities steadily increasing at all 3 stations since then. The figure on the bottom shows the water column salinity at the US 1 bridge, which is located most closely to the oyster monitoring station at Rio. And you can see that during those releases from Lake Okeechobee, there were 3 or 4 periods where they dropped into the lower stressful range where salinities were only 5 to 10. But once those releases stopped at the end of March, they climbed quickly back into the optimal range, which is the green band on that figure, and have remained there since. So the conditions in the estuary are pretty optimal right now for oyster spawning. And to end, I do have the latest results from FWC's oyster monitoring in the St. Lucie Estuary. They do this at the Rio station, and this figure is showing settlement rates or larval settlement rates of oysters for the past 2 years. We can see that in November of 2023, those numbers dropped to near 0 and remained very low through March. That's exactly what we expect, as spawning and reproduction is very influenced by temperature. So when temperatures are cooler, oysters stop spawning and go into a resting period. When they begin warming up again in the spring, that's when they start spawning again. So their April data indicates that oyster spawning has started again in the estuary, and we got an average of 1.3 spat per shell. Exactly the same as what we saw a year ago in April, but quite a bit lower than what we saw 2 years ago in April, where it was over 13 spat per shell. So it's very possible that we'll see a peak that's much higher this next month when they collect their data. So the good news is conditions are right for that to happen. So hopefully we'll get that data in the next couple weeks. And that's all I have unless there are questions.
Yes, sir, Doug, go ahead.
Mark those oysters better. I come and go a lot to go downtown Stewart to go to have lunch and such and go to the city docks there, and they're great. But those oyster beds are really close to the channel, and I've seen people, you can hear the fiberglass.
Oh, yeah.
Just, they need to mark those, because my boat's my baby, and every time I see a guy doing that, I hug my boat, because it's just, the channel's not well marked there. And I see people thinking, oh, there's a city docks on a cruise in, and it's just a god-awful sound. And I look, and you can't quite see where to go coming into the city docks.
Right,
It's
and
not your fault or anything to do with you,
Oh,
but
no, yeah.
they
It
need-
changes a bit with the tides as well.
It does.
You can come in sometime and have no problem and then not realize how low the tide has gotten.
Yeah.
And run into some trouble.
But it's very cool to be able to go shopping downtown by boat. It's really neat. Stewart's super cool, and I do that a lot. But if they could mark that better, that'd be wonderful. I've come really close, come very close. Yeah.
Any other questions for Dr. Parker? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And that brings us to item 7, the conference committee reports. We'll start with the management board reports with Beth Powell. Hi.
I am obviously not Beth Powell. Report on her behalf from the management board report for you all. On Tuesday, May 7th, the Indian River Lagoon Council Management Board convened at just next door at the historic schoolhouse, beginning at its regular time of 10:15. There were 29 members present and 6 guests were also in attendance. Beth wants to thank the management board for your recommendation and election, along with Terry Breeden from Brevard County Natural Resources Management Department. She's serving as vice chair, and Beth is serving as chair for this upcoming year. She extends her gratitude to all chairs and vice chairs who've conducted meetings with great care and professionalism over the years. She feels like she has big shoes to fill, and she apologizes for not being here today and just wants to thank the staff for presenting in her absence. There were no revisions to their agenda. Things moved along pretty smoothly. As usual, the Finance Subcommittee presented their report, which the Management Board did accept. And then just like you have heard today, that board also heard the water quality presentations. They also got to hear a report from Kara Radabaugh, who is a research scientist, coastal wetlands research with Fish and Wildlife Research Institute, specifically about the Jensen Beach impoundment mangrove recovery research that's being conducted as part of the funding from this council. And of particular interest was a phrase that was introduced to a lot of people called a mangrove heart attack or a mangrove forest heart attack, which is attributed to many different factors, including prolonged hydrology, and which causes the peat to collapse. They had an excellent discussion and they gratefully acknowledged Robin Lewis's lifelong work and dedication to the lagoon, especially regarding the mangrove research. There was no old business to conduct at the meeting, and so they moved right on along to the new business. And so fiscal year 2025 final report, which was provided by Daniel Kolodny, was unanimously recommended that the board of directors review and adopt this. Dan also presented the small grants proposals for funding. The board also gave that unanimous motion to recommend to the Board of Directors that approved the ranked list, which I think you'll see later today, approved that ranked list because they did unanimously approve that list. And she just wanted to thank the CAC members for their efforts in reviewing and scoring because there were a lot of great projects submitted. Dan also presented the fiscal year 2025 EPA bill work plan. We did have one abstention from voting, but because of a project, a conflict of interest, but all of the other management board did unanimously vote to recommend that the Board of Directors authorize staff to finalize and submit the fiscal year 2025 bill work plan with authorization for staff to submit this plan to EPA. Dr. Chuck Jacoby provided information regarding the draft Science 2030 document, which is a long-term science data plan. The management board unanimously approved a motion to accept the document, advancing scientific research for the Indian River Lagoon and looking ahead to 2030 draft. And so that they agreed, like you, they frequently vote unanimously as well. And then staff presented all of their reports. We had some final comments, and they ended their meeting at right on time, a little early at noon. Any questions for me via Beth? Beth via me?
Doug has one.
Yeah, I hate to be, I was, have my hand in the air, but with the walking mangroves, red mangroves, I have a theory they're very sensitive to sunscreens. Anywhere I go, I've noticed in Stewart and in Vero and in Sebastian Inlet, wherever I'm fishing, wherever boaters are that are slathering up with sunscreens, that's the only common denominator I could think of in each site, that the sunscreens are affecting the red mangrove root system, the walking mangroves, the island builders. Because I see those mangroves, the canopies are dying out, and the mangrove islands that are further away from the boaters, like the next island over where there's no boaters, are flourishing, they're brilliant green. But where the boaters are, and it's not their anchors, they're not anchoring into the walking mangroves, they're anchoring very well, and there's no pollution. It's I considered a lot of options, and I come back to the sunscreens, coating the walking mangroves, red mangroves root system. I'm just curious if your group has looked at sunscreens and their impacts on mangroves.
No, this particular presentation that was given to us was about a specific project, the Jensen Beach impoundment, with trying to reconnect to create better water circulation.
Okay.
And so really the problem was just these stressful conditions because the system is not operating in a more natural manner because of the impoundment. And so there was some initial storm issues from one of the hurricanes, and there has been a pretty great recovery, but they were talking about how just this whole suite of conditions makes mangroves more sensitive to these heart attacks.
Yeah. It has nothing to do with mangroves, but the country of Australia and the state of Hawaii have banned certain sunscreens because it's killing the reef system.
Mm-hmm.
And we sit here with one of the longest reef systems in the world next to the Great Barrier Reef, and we've not banned those sunscreens. I'm just a diver, and I've watched from Sebastian Inlet down to Key West. I've dove probably every rock there looking for lobster, and I watched the decline of that reef system. And other countries and states have banned sunscreens because the Great Barrier Reef's 30 miles offshore. 30 miles offshore, yet they're seeing a decline in certain areas where people boat with sunscreens, and it's killing the reef system. That's nothing to do with this story, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry, but
You might be interested to go to Environmental Working Group's website where they rank many products, sunscreens included. They've recently sponsored some interesting studies about sunscreens and their effect on human health as well as environmental health.
it's not good. Big hat and a long sleeve shirt's better. So
I personally agree. Yeah.
Sounds like a great opportunity for a closed system research to see if your theory holds out.
I think there's an opportunity.
Yeah.
so many opportunities to jump on issues like that. Florida's got 10 million people in the southern part of our peninsula that's sunscreen every day. We used to have, and I dove a lot of it, it used to be 50 years ago, the reef system was brilliant. You used to see hogfish and bright corals, but now it's all beat up, and why? And I think with the advent of sunscreens and people anchoring right there, I think that has a lot to do with it. Hawaii's recognized it. The entire country of Australia has recognized it. Florida, we have there's only 2 states in the United States that have a coral reef system, Hawaii and Florida. And ours is bigger, and we're losing it. So nothing to do with Lagoon. I'm off.
It's all connected.
I'm off on the deep end again, so sorry.
Any other questions, comments?
Nope. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
STEM Advisory Committee, Dr. Jacoby. You're not wearing sunscreen, are you?
No, sir. Good morning. Chuck Jacoby, Florida Flood Hub. The STEM Advisory Committee met on Tuesday as well, from 3:30 till about 10 after 3. And a couple of highlights. We also heard the presentation about the mangroves and the issues because the hurricane had driven fresh water up into this impoundment and it wasn't draining very rapidly. And the water levels really stress mangroves out if they stay high. They're used to that tidal fluctuation. Anyway, so it was a very good presentation. Old business, we voted on recommending to you moving forward with the Science 2030 plan, which you'll hear a little more about in item 10E. We also had new business, recommended funding the small grants, including the additional projects that Daniel will talk about, and acceptance of the 2025 EPA bill work plan. Happy to answer questions.
Questions? Looks like you're good. Thank you. Citizens Advisory Committee. You're not Frank.
I got that last week too. My name is Tess Taylor-Tynes. I'm the Conservation Science Coordinator at the Marine Discovery Center, and I serve as the co-chair for the Citizens Advisory Committee. We met last Thursday from about 1:30 to 3:30 p.m., and we discussed many of the issues that have been brought forth already. So we discussed the small grants application program. There were, as mentioned, a number of applications that came to us for review, and a lot of those grants that ranked differently were ultimately brought into the program just because of the work that they intended to do. So that list was created and accepted by the CAC. We also discussed the 2025 final budget and approved the edits that were made to it to also come to you guys as the board of directors. We also talked about the Science 2030 program and identified the different priorities that were outlined for that paperwork and plan. Those were also accepted and brought forth to be accepted by you all, the board of directors, for review. And then finally, we also talked about the EPA BIL work plan, the edits that were made to that document to be brought to your review as well. We also got staff reports, the different community engagement coordinators, and one of the main items that was discussed among the Citizens Advisory Committee following that discussion was possible metrics that can be created to account for public commentary on and perspectives on some of the projects that are being done throughout the Indian River Lagoon, so that we can better have communication between the communities and the work that's being done. And that's it.
Any questions, council?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that brings us to item 8, the consent agenda, and we'll start with the minutes. We had one correction to the February 9th, 2024 minutes. Under item 3, Becky Allenbach and Jennifer DeMeo are from the EPA, not the DEP, so we've made that correction. Did anyone else have a correction? Okay. Why don't we vote on that, and then we'll complete the rest of the consent agenda if we have a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay. All right. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Then we have the rest of the consent agenda. There's some Board of Directors appointments, and I can run through them, but Dr. DeFries, I'll defer to you I know this is important to you, if you'd like to introduce these people or mention them, or I can just run through them.
Go ahead and feel
Okay.
free to run through them.
We have Melissa Meisenberg, the Senior Lagoon Environmentalist Specialist, Indian River County, is now a member of the Management Board. Melissa Dialosa, Strategic Basin Planner with the St. Johns River Water Management District, is replacing Gretchen Kelly. Elizabeth Kelly, Environmental Programs Coordinator, Martin County, changed from Management Board to STEM Advisory Committee. And Amy Eason, Environmental Resource Engineer of Martin County, to the Management Board. I will ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda. We have a motion
So moved.
Second.
in 3 seconds.
Good.
I think the first one was from Rob. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And consent agenda passes unanimously. We have no old business. We do have some new business. Item 10, we will start with the passage of something that we voted on a long time ago, of the Senate Bill 224.
Mr. Chair, quick change. Glenn Tercivia wasn't able to make it today, so Ruth Holmes is going to address this issue.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Council. Yes, I'm replacing Glenn today, just for the day. And, excuse me, he asked me to give you a brief presentation on SB 224. So, as you know, Chapter 286 of Florida statutes generally prescribes the how, when, and where meetings are conducted of public bodies in the state of Florida. Senate Bill 224 was a slight amendment to that that allows for volunteer citizen advisory committees so that they can participate in those meetings for national estuary programs that span at least 4 counties. They can participate in those advisory committee meetings by electronic communication that a lot of us have come to know as Zoom as an example platform. So this new law will affect Tess and her other committee members so that folks that live up in Volusia County don't necessarily have to drive down to Martin and et cetera. They can, from now on, participate via electronic communication platforms. Some of the conditions of that has to be in the notice that is published. So the regular notices of the advisory committees that are published, they have to state whether or not the committee meeting can be or it will be over electronic communications. And they also have to state, the notice has to state whether or not there's a facility for the public to also participate the same way. There hasn't been any interpretation over that and whether or not, for example, the IRL Council has to provide a facility for the public. That will be yet to be determined. But the good news is that this bill has been passed and signed by the governor, and we want to especially recognize and thank Representative Altman, Senator Wright, and Senator Debbie Mayfield, and of course, their staff. Unless there's any questions, that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
I have just a quick question. Does each, the Citizens Board, do they have to vote on whether or not the members can vote during their meeting?
So if I may not understand your question correctly, but if the member is present, if the volunteer representative is present via the communications technology and it's been properly noticed, then that counts as towards the quorum. And so it's as if they were physically present, so they can vote that way.
Okay, yeah, I was thinking more of the person doing, participating remotely. I know when we do it as a county, we have to have a formal vote allowing them to actually participate in our votes, so.
The new law doesn't address that in particular.
good.
So it seems that if there is going to be, for example, a future meeting that can be conducted via electronic communications platform, that would have to be most likely voted on and at the prior meeting.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Just a comment.
Doug, yes.
This is not really in your area, but it involves politics and bills, but you mentioned Senator Mayfield, and I want to mention also Congressman Bill Posey. The Lagoon is losing two huge advocates. Those two have been wonderful to this lagoon. Debbie has been, and Bill has been there for us every time that I've gone to them saying support the lagoon. Those two legislators on the federal and state level have been phenomenal, and I hope in the future that we can recognize those two, because they've carried our water for us on a lot of levels. And Debbie in particular, she's been here from the beginning when we hired Dwayne, and she supported everything we've done in this council all along. And when asked, Bill Posey was always there for us, and as you know, they're both moving on. So I'd like for us in the future meeting to recognize them if we can.
Great. I hope voters pay attention to the significant role they played in the lagoon and the environment. But I appreciate you mentioning Senator Wright from Volusia County. At least that's part of his district. Senator Mayfield and Thad Altman and their staffs. This was a big lift, and it'll help us get better participation.
And it also goes without saying that Representative Altman and Senator Wright were the official sponsors of the bill, too.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to a new business item B, the fiscal year 2025 final budget. Daniel Kolodny.
So per our Florida statutes, we have to have a final budget in place by June 1st. This budget differs very slightly from our tentative budget that was passed back in February. All it does is expand our strategic program by $98,103. This is the decisions that were made at the February meeting, approving those projects that came forth through the RFPs and those additional funds to fully fund those projects, as well as an additional project that was accepted. And that's all we have on this budget from the tentative budget. If you need
pardon me?
A vote on the final budget.
Okay. And then we'll go into small grants. If I could get a motion to approve these minor changes to the final budget. So moved by Doug, seconded by, thank you very much. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And small grants. If you want to walk us through these.
Yeah. So there was 24 proposals received as part of the small grants program. The CAC reviewed them and ranked them, and there was 7 that were within the amounted funding allocation of $25,000. So you see those on your list there as the green projects, and I'll give you a little background on these projects. The Swirl, the top ranked, is a team that's going to train and supervise local high schools and undergraduate college students to regularly collect stormwater outfall samples bi-weekly. They're going to prepare samples for analysis, conduct instrumental analysis for organic compounds via gas chromatography at Eastern Florida State College, and they'll collect data on pesticides, herbicides, and pharmaceutical indicators, and then they'll provide those data digitally to anybody interested. The Surf Rider project at Ballard Park is going to plant native uplands buffer gardens along 2 waterfront sections of the park near Egali at Ballard Park. Additionally, they're going to do some exotic removal of invasive Hawaiian sea grapes. The third project, Orca, they're proposing to install and monitor buffer zones along 3 storm drains in the city of Sebastian here. And they're going to coordinate with community members to install 3 15-foot buffers around those storm drains, and they're also going to educate and train a portion of them to scientifically monitor before, during, and after installation to show those nutrient reductions from those buffers. The fourth project, Brevard Zoo's Lagoon Quest, is an environmental education program that engages Brevard County 4th graders in hands-on conservation education through a field-based study trip to the IRL. The fifth project, Stella Maris Outreach, includes unique and potential first-time experiences for underserved students, which will represent 100% of the attendees for each of the 4 day-long events. The sixth project, UCF citizen scientists, they're going to collect replicate samples of atmospheric deposition of microplastics from areas in Mosquito Lagoon for 4-hour periods following rainfall events, and then they will do some filtering, microscopy, and chemistry to determine the compositions of those materials collected. And so those, and I'm sorry, so seventh project, called the ZIP project, is a partnership with Marine Discovery Center to do organic and natural approach to oyster reef restoration. They'll utilize biodegradable and plastic-free materials. And so those 7 projects were within our allocated funding. There was an additional 4, as shown in the yellow here, that were all ranked above the funding threshold of 70%. However, they fell outside of that funding threshold. The CAC, the STEM, and the Management Board all recommended that those 4 additional projects be funded since they did reach the threshold. And you can see there in the bottom right corner, it would be an additional $14,098 to fully fund those additional 4 projects. And I'd be happy to give you some information about those projects if you'd like to hear more.
Council? I would love to hear more about them.
So the 8th project, in the yellow one, MDC, this is the Project Plankton. It's a continuation of a small grant that got awarded last year in 2023. In 2024, they aim to refine the data collection process through the use of a YSI meter to more accurately and efficiently collect temperature, salinity, pH, turbidity, and dissolved oxygen. And they're hoping that this will help them get more accurate readings and be a key understanding for changes in plankton populations. The 9th project there is St. Edward's School. So students within the marine science course of the program will participate in 6 field labs at Barrier Island and Shoreline Lagoon restoration sites between Fort Pierce Inlet and St. Lucie County to Gifford Point in Indian River County. And they will be transported by boat. They can observe the lagoon, participate in field lab studies, doing collections, hydrology, looking at submerged aquatic vegetation, and other things within the lagoon. The 10th project is a Sykes Creek cleanup proposed by the Community Advocacy of Merritt Island. The aim of this project is to mobilize volunteers to remove pollutants using kayaks and cleanup equipment immediately following the Merritt Island Boat Parade. So that's a big event that happens every year in those canal systems, and there's usually a lot of debris and trash from that event. And the last project in the yellow there is from Little Growers. This is their Summer Earn and Learn Estuary Echo program. It's a 6-week camp designed to engage 15 students aged 13 to 18 in meaningful environmental stewardship. And so they would be doing activities and workshops focused on environmental conservation, estuarine ecology, and sustainable practices such as water quality monitoring, native habitat restoration, and marine debris cleanup.
So the CAC's recommendation is to fund all 11.
All 11
Funding's
projects.
available.
Yes.
Council, then I will ask for, what's your pleasure? I need a motion to either fund 1 through 7 or hopefully 1 through 11.
Mr. Chair, I have a
Yes.
concern or question, both. where is the funding coming from? And because it's 2/3 of what the original budget was. So my reasoning for this is they're good projects. My concern is while we do have funds coming in and we're doing well today, there's been a time in our history where we didn't have the funds available. And if it's coming from reserves or wherever it's coming from, my concern is that we get a little too far down the road. Yes, we want to do as many projects as possible, but if we see this spigot of funds start to drop off, where does that put us? Just a cautionary thought. And so, Dan, where's it coming from?
So this would come from our unencumbered reserve balance. So every year we have a fund balance and we get an audit, that audited. And what I have to do every year from that audited fund balance is reconcile it to all the projects that are in progress. So there's a certain amount already encumbered to these projects. We look at, though, once that reconciliation is done, is how much do we have that's not tied to anything. So we also have a lot of soft income revenue that comes in that's not part of our budget because it's hard to identify what that would be. And that's from our interest, donations, those types of things. I know I've mentioned to this board before, our interest rate currently is over 4%, and we're bringing in roughly $12,000 to $13,000 a month in interest. So $14,000 is just barely over 1 month of interest. We also have lots of, every project comes in at budget or below. So that's all, once that comes in, those go into unencumbered reserve. So we have a fairly healthy unencumbered reserve at this point. I should know more once our fiscal year 2023 audited fund balance is finished. We're in single audit at this moment right now, so our audit isn't complete, but we will have that number by August, and so we should have a clearer picture. But I have the last year's estimate on the fiscal year 2025 budget, which you passed. That audited or estimated fund balance, should I say, is based on last year's fund balance and then expending everything that was in our budget. So if we fully expended everything in our budget, we would still have over $700,000 in unencumbered reserve. So we're fine.
All right. Well, thank you, Dan. And I to the council, just simply saying, as I've been through the recession in multiple budget years in St. Lucie County, my first budget there was leaving 350 people on the street. And so while not in our current future, just raise the concern that we be prudent in how we manage our budgets going forward, because I don't know how long the gravy train, so to speak, will continue. And I think it's important that we understand that we want to continue to do projects, and whatever those funds are into the future, that we're frugal about how we manage them. Get the projects done, yes, but understand that we're not always going to have this level of funding, and it's just a concern. Just raising it to your attention.
No, that's good. It's a wise concern. Any other questions for Dan before we make a motion? And then once there's a motion on the floor, there's a chance to debate again. But any other questions for Mr. Kolodny?
Mr. Chair, move approval staff recommendation as submitted with the condition.
So 1 through 7 or 1 through 11?
11.
Okay.
Second.
Motion on the floor is to entirely fund it 1 through 11, and Libby Pigman makes the second. Debate, questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And small grants are approved 1 through 11 unanimously. And you're still here, fiscal year 2025 EPA bill work plan.
All right, so this is just authorization to finalize and submit our 2025 EPA bill work plan. We have to do one separately to EPA from our Section 320 and our bill funds. There was a slight change from the original agenda packet that was sent out. So we actually heard last Thursday from EPA, who is still reviewing our 2024 work plan, that there were some concerns regarding the contractual portions of that work plan. So anybody that's a for-profit company, they were looking into the procurement guidelines. One of them was found to be just outside their procurement guidelines, so we decided to edit our 2025 work plan to get that outside of any compliance issues. And so what you'll see, I think, in that package is there was 3 activities originally: the Seagrass Nursery Network, the Diversity of Thought, Priority Communities Consulting, and the Priority Communities RFP. And so what we've done is take out that consulting and put it into the Activity 2, Priority Communities Implementation RFP, and boosted it from 360, 800 to 409, 800. And that's it, only change.
Any questions for Dan before we get a motion to authorize staff to develop and submit the fiscal year 2025 EPA bill work plan and authorize staff to submit the plan to the EPA, which is required? Any
Move
questions?
approval.
Who made the motion? Chris made the motion. Who made the second? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. That brings us to the Science 2030. Dr. Jacoby.
Again, thank you. Chuck Jacoby for the Flood Hub. And what I'm here to talk about is the document that we're calling Science 2030. We were working on for a while, actually. And it will be a living document, so that it'll just keep on evolving as things change. But essentially, the document as it currently stands has two parts. The first part is a set of targets for scientific investigations that will support the Indian River Lagoon Protection Plan, which is implemented through Department of Environmental Protection. And the second part is a compendium of other sort of scientific questions that have been raised by members of the STEM Advisory Committee and others. And what we're trying to do is just document this in a plan. So think of it as the accompanying plan for the restoration plan or even the CCMP. This is just focused in on some of the issues that the scientists raise. And again, this will continue to live. It'll be online. We'll revise it maybe once a year, have a good look, and take comments as we go. And basically, we're just asking for you to give the go-ahead to move this forward.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Can I get a motion to accept the report and move it forward? Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Did you get the second? Okay, it was Joe. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I just want to thank Dr. Jacoby for his support on this. You can imagine with over 30 research entities on our STEM AC, when you ask what's important, you get a lot of different perspectives, and Chuck has been amazing over the course of well over a year and a half to 2 years, kind of whittling this down into a cogent, general guidance for prioritizing science and also aligning with this new Indian River Lagoon Protection Program directive that we have from the governor. So I just want to, on the record, say thanks, Chuck. We really appreciate it. It was a heavy lift, and we'll keep looking at this each year as science continues to move forward.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Jacoby. Staff reports. Kathy Hill, Community Engagement Update.
Good morning. So I have our metrics for the social media for the last quarter. And we've done it a bit differently than we have in the past, just so you can see sort of how things went throughout the quarter. And you can see where it grew and where it didn't grow. The only thing to mention is that our reach was pretty good this time. It was about 149,000 folks over the course of the quarter, much better than it was over the holidays. So things are moving in the right direction. They're going well. These are our top performing posts, from Facebook. So in January, we had a popular mangrove post just talking about mangroves and how they live. In February, it was a beautiful scene and a beautiful day, and everybody was ready for that by February. And then in March, we had another one, another scenic vista, just talking about Blue Mind and just kind of touching nature and getting in touch with water and with, just the beauty of nature. On Instagram, we are at about 14,000 reach for all of our posts. You can see that we've got about 1,700 followers, which is good. That's grown in the last quarter. Interactions are up.
so we're happy with that. And the only thing I would point out to you, just go back for a sec, if you look at the bright blue line where sort of in the middle of those three lines, those are our ads. Most of our ads are for the license plate. And so on Facebook, those ads do pretty well. You can see that there's interaction with them and a lot of reach. And on Instagram, they do not go as well. So that's sort of a flat line. We're going to work on that a little bit, see if we can get that number up. But again, the audiences are different between Facebook and Instagram. So these are our top performing posts in January through March. So an Oyster post, we hopped on the trend for Jason Kelsey's angry picture and got a lot of interaction with that. And then we had a Friends one, just sort of lamenting folks who don't get their grant funding, and that went over pretty well too. So those were two funny ones that people really enjoyed. With the community engagement coordinators, so they have done over the course of the last quarter 11 government meetings. They have been to 38 events, including lots of Earth Day events and things leading up to Earth Day. They gave 18 presentations, went to 59 community meetings, so they've been super busy. In the field 13 times and did 59 outreach events or meetings or meet and greets, depending on what the event was. And then lastly, I'm just going to close with KJ and I went to the EPA annual meetings in Washington from April 30th through May 2nd. So we talked about the things that you see there. I'm not going to read them, but they were very productive meetings, got lots of good information, did a little bit of tech transfer, and just super good discussions. We also did a couple of Hill visits. So we met with Senator Rubio's staff, and Senator Scott himself came into the room and sat with us for about 15 minutes. So very productive, just generally really good meetings. And then I'll close with this. This was my highlight. I think I speak for KJ by saying that, but we shared a street corner with Bill Nye the Science Guy, so that was fun. And that is it for me.
Did you straighten him out on any of his science?
No, we didn't. He had a lot of people around him, so we didn't bother him, but we did snap a picture.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Any questions?
Thanks.
All right, thank you. KJ, Information Technology and Data Science Update.
Morning. So at the beginning of the month, April? I think it's April. I'm getting my weeks all confused. I went to West Palm Beach for the Southeast Esri User Conference. So we had about people all the way from Virginia all the way down to, Puerto Rico that came in, and we're all GIS professionals. I gave a presentation about our master project map and how we can improve it, and kind of looking at the dynamics from our CCMP. And so I got a lot of input. About 50 people were in the audience, and so I got kind of feedback on how we can make it better and kind of keeping it accountable with our CCMP. So the update 2.0 for the master project map will be coming out in December. And it'll be more of a dashboard interface. So you can see kind of how much money has gone for each of our vital signs. So it's more of a metric, keeping track of where the money's going for our vital signs. This was probably the funnest part of my trip so far. I've had about 3 interviews since I've been here, but I've been interviewing commercial and recreational guides along the lagoon. I've had about 5 interviews so far, and the list keeps growing every time I ask the question of who I should talk to. So I think I have about 50 people on a list now of people that should be interviewed, but I just met with the Goodriches that are up in Oak Hill, and met with Susie and Neil, and they're on their 80s, but they're 5th-generation Floridians, about how the lagoon has changed and how the fisheries have changed. We are still kind of in the process of what the story is going to be, but getting these kind of interviews put together, and they're going to go to the NOAA Oral History Guide. So this kind of history will be preserved for the Indian River Lagoon. The Boaters Guide, I am almost done with that. So by our next meeting, the Boaters Guide that we paid for 2 years ago, right, Dan? It'll be a digital app, so you guys can access it from your phone. And so I'll have a link and probably a demo next time I'm here for that. And that is it.
Thank you. Any questions for KJ?
I got to say, you got to get Doug on the boater story list. I'm sure you got.
Yeah.
Are you on it?
No.
You got to get Doug on there.
I was just going to warn you not to Well, watch out for the guys in Manatee Pocket down at Stewart Way. Kathy LaMartina's out there. She knows that crowd in there is dangerous, so just be careful.
I had an interview with Grant Gilmore, and that was 3.5 hours in our office.
Oh, yeah.
It was fun. He had a lot of stories to share about how the lagoon has changed. So if you guys have anybody that you think should be on the list, I would love to interview them. If they sit down and talk with me, it could be over a beer, it could be more professional, whatever they're comfortable with. So, but okay, cool.
Speaking of which, I saw a picture of guys catching sailfish on the original Stewart Bridge when it was built. They caught sails in the Indian River Lagoon right there, long time ago.
I told my husband that, what was it? There were some very Florida man moments in some of these interviews, and I won't say it on the record, but there was some stories that were a little crazy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Before you go to Dan, I just want to add a little bit of context. We're working hard to make sure that our community engagement coordinators and staff get higher profile both at a statewide level and also a national level. So you'll start to see this. It's happening right now. Kalita was at a Gullah Geechee conference up north. Dan will mention here in a minute, he did the South Atlantic Fisheries Management. So the kinds of things that normally I would represent, trying to get our staff out there at a higher level of engagement, especially at the national level. And you'll see in my report how a trip like Kathy and KJ did with EPA in Washington, what that translates to in real outcome. So I just want to let you know we are doing that very strategically to grow the expertise and experience of our staff.
Thank you for that update. IRL project update, Daniel Kolodny.
All right, so I'll jump into the project update. Two things that don't relate to the project that I'm just going to mention real quickly. Dwayne just mentioned I gave a presentation to the South Atlantic Fisheries Management Council Habitat Ecosystem Advisory Panel, and that they were looking to revise a alterations to flow document for riverine and estuarine systems, and they needed a different perspective than the typical estuary that they think about. And so I went up there and gave them a really in-depth look at all the different impacts that have happened to the lagoon and how our system is unique. And it really opened their eyes. A lot of them didn't know what a causeway was, an earthen causeway. They all thought it was bridges. They were surprised at how impactful stormwater is to our system and all the alterations made in the watershed. So really good. Interested to see what comes out of that document and the revision and how it plays to potential impacts in the future. Also, last year, the legislature passed a law that all special district appointees now have to take an ethics training course. So if you are not an elected official, but you're a governing board member appointed, you do have to take a 4-hour training, and I will definitely send that out to you. It has to be completed by the end of the year. So just be aware that there are some new requirements for special district governing board members. Going into our project update, at the end of the Q2, we had 41 projects or activities still in progress. 4 projects were completed, and you can see the list here, and I'm going to kind of go through them real quickly and give you kind of the highlights of those 4 projects. So the first one's the City of Cocoa Beach. This was, or City of Cocoa, I'm sorry. Indian River Drive and Dixon Boulevard. This was just a design and engineering phase of this project, so they're looking to get to the construction. But once constructed, it will treat 40 acres up in Cocoa, and you can see the estimates for nutrient reductions there, 130 pounds of total nitrogen and 20.6 of total phosphorus per year. They're looking to put in second generation baffle boxes and outfalls along that Indian River Drive there, which is right next to the Indian River Lagoon. And then this is just straight from the 100% designs, kind of just showing you a little bit of the engineering for those baffle boxes and outfalls. This next project, it was a long one that we had going on. They did extensive long-term monitoring, but it was originally planted back in 2021. This is down by Fort Pierce Inlet in Fort Pierce State Park. It's an area called Tucker Cove. This was seen shoreline planting seagrass in this area. They did 250 4-inch pots that had 4 or 5 planting units in it, and then 10,000 single planting units. They did 1 year of herbivory exclusion devices, and then a total of 3 years of monitoring afterwards. The graph you can see on the left, or the image there, shows you those 5 transects for their long-term monitoring. And then on the right is kind of an example of what the typical seagrass people, when they're monitoring, how they explain the coverage of those areas. And so 0.5 is considered sparse. And then you can see it gets all the way up to 5, the highest score, which is considered 76 to 100% coverage. So what you can see there on the left is what the seagrass look like over that time. And you can see they're very low, you know, almost 0 or 0.5. But I wanted to throw in this stuff on the right to kind of explain why was it so low. You know, why was it such a tough site to get seagrass recovery there? There was a lot of drift algae. So this site had tons of drift algae coming in and piling up. It was probably smothering that seagrass, so it had no light and no area to grow. And then this also shows you some macroalgae that was growing, fixed macroalgae on the bottom, which had some pretty high scores in some areas. So there's a lot of algae growing in this site, so there was definitely some things that wasn't the right site maybe to replant seagrass. There was also some other factors they had there, such as sea urchins. And sea urchins sometimes like to take shells and put them on top of them to help kind of create a protective barrier from predators. They were pulling seagrass little planting units out and putting them up on top. And Carter from Sea and Shoreline has some really cool pictures, and you can see one there showing they were taking debris and the seagrass and putting them on top. But there is some good news from that site. There is still some seagrass there, and that photo all the way at the bottom right is pretty recent and shows you that there is some sparse seagrass still trying to hang on in that site. But this project shows you the importance of site dynamics when choosing a site. You know, if it's got a lot of macroalgae or drift algae in the area, it might not be an ideal location for seagrass restoration. Moat Marine Lab, this is a project that was funded for fiscal year 2024. They were looking to repeat a study that was done back in 2018 to look at genetic diversity of seagrass throughout the RRL, as well as within some of these seagrass nurseries that are coming online. And they wanted to see, you know, what the genetic diversity looked like after all these major algae blooms and loss of seagrass. And I bolded the big takeaway from this project. The levels of differentiation between the nurseries were similar or above the levels from the 2018 study, as well as the natural population. So we've got really good genetic diversity, not only in the lagoon, but also in the nurseries. So that's really important as we get to more restoration type efforts. And then this just shows you on the left where those sites were, where they did their sampling. It shows you the 4 different nurseries down in the bottom right corner. And then that graph on the upper right just shows you the dots on the top of that line that goes through the graph is from the 2023. So you can see they're all higher than the study done in 2018. And then lastly, this is Orca's One Health Fish Monitoring. This is a small grant that was funded. They have been awarded small grant funding for several years, and they've been doing this One Health Fish Monitoring. The first year was mercury, then they did cadmium testing. Last year they did glyphosate testing, and then this year they did PFAS. And so they did mass spec analysis of 31 different speciations of PFAS. So it's not just PFAS, there's several different, there's PFOA, there's PFNA, all these different ones. They looked at all these different fish throughout the lagoon and 111 fish. There were 4 fish that had no detects. The highest concentrations were in Brevard County, but I'm going to throw a caveat in. 1 fish had super high numbers and kind of skewed that total data for that. And so what I'm going to show you is, you can see there that 4th bullet down, there were some fish species that seemed to have higher PFAS than other fish species, such as Jack Crevalle, hardhead catfish, and ladyfish. Those typically had the highest levels. And then you can see here at the bottom, pompano had none. So if you're thinking about eating a fish out of the lagoon, pompano is your safest bet for PFAS. And that's all I have, so I'll take any questions. Good question.
Where are the pompano living?
Well, pompano, one, grow very fast. They don't have a very long lifespan. And they also run down the beach, will come into the lagoon for a little bit, and then they go back out. So they don't spend a lot of time in the lagoon. I think that's probably the reason why they have the lowest PFAS. And they're short-lived. So the longer-lived species seem to have those higher levels.
Are you going pompano fishing, Doug? Okay. Good. Good. Yes, they do. Any other questions, Doug? Thank you very much. Filet of pompano. And Kathy Hill, who's going to do are you going to do the executive director report? Good.
Before I do, though, I see Captain Blair Wiggins is here. Blair, you want to come up and address? Is that okay, Mr. Chair? Board?
That'd be great. I was going to ask before we went to the.
I told him you were running late and you were feeling a little peaked from the heat. Hate to say, I think it's his age.
Did KJ interview him yet? Yeah. Okay.
Am I on your list? Okay, cool. How you doing, everybody? I'm Captain Blair Wiggins. I started the Indian River Clam Restoration Project about 5 years ago. And up to date now, we've released, let me give you up to next week. We're going to break the 40 million clam release in the Indian River Lagoon system next week. We just teamed up with CCA for a billion clam initiative this year. Our goal is to release 1 billion clams coming up. And we've incorporated a drone. If anybody saw it on Channel 9 News, Melanie Holt interviewed us last week, and we released 9 million clams in about 2 hours. And the project's doing well. We've got about a 63% success rate. We've got clams from New Smyrna Beach all the way down to Grant. I really was unprepared for this meeting right now, so I'm giving you things off the top of my head. We started the project like 5 years ago with CCA. Dwayne DeFries was a big part of us getting started. University of Florida Whitney Labs, Todd Osborne from University of Florida is basically the doctor behind the project. And I'm the kind of guy that I grew up in Cocoa Beach. I'm a 5th-generation Floridian, and I've seen the river die, and when I hooked up with Dr. Todd, he was able to basically interpret everything I say. I've seen plenty of people come up and say, you know, I've seen the water orange, I've seen the water black, and, you know, something's got to be done. And Dr. Todd was able to basically hear everything that I've seen growing up in the Indian River, Banana River Lagoon system and interpret it and put it into scientific, basically terminology where I don't understand it, but he understands it and can, you know, help us out in the clam project. But to date, right now, we're at 40 million clams and going strong. Anybody have any questions so far? I know I'll be prepared better for the next one, I promise you. Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, from your observations, what are you seeing? How are we making any progress?
If I had my phone with me right now, I'm excited because Captain Jim Ross this morning, his son Justin, who's a fishing guide on the Banana River, we released, we put a clam bed out in the northern part of Cocoa Beach about 2 years ago, and he just sent me pictures this morning of small clams where there was no clams 5 years ago when we started the project. And a lot of the clam beds that we have established in the Indian River now, a lot of the fishermen are wading around the area and fishing there, and they're sending me pictures of little clams that were no clams there 5 years ago. I was a guide back in the 90s, and I saw the clammers coming in by the thousands, actually over 10,000 clammers. And what a lot of people don't know is they were taking most of our quahog clams, but what people don't realize is how much other stuff they were killing at the time in the river, which was horseshoe crabs, spider crabs, everything that helps break down to help filter feeders out there do their job and filter the water so we can have clean water. But I went with clams because that was the last thing I saw disappear in the river system before the collapse in 2010, 2009 of the clams. And, you know, the clams are working. And the new project that we have, the Billion Clam Initiative, is going strong. We've already released, you know, almost 20 million clams this year Good. So it's going strong. So I want to let everybody know that the clam population is definitely coming up. We've got cleaner water, and wherever we're doing our water samples from Piney to Causeway all the way down to 192, we're finding veligers in the water now, and that's a clam larva. And 5 years ago, when they were doing water samples, very little amount of any clam larva was being found. Now it's being found every time we get a temperature change and they spawn. We go out and do our test and find them, and we're just finding them randomly any part of the causeways when we go and do our water test. So it's definitely working out there.
Mr. Chair.
Any questions?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir, Chris.
As part of your process, are you harvesting any of the clams and having any of the science groups actually look at what they're taking up and what is actually happening to the clam?
Dr.
to
Todd at
filtration?
Whitney Labs is doing that. He was talking to me about that support, that type of a project going on, but no, not to date that I know of.
It'd be interesting to see what they're taking up and what they're holding on the actual meat of the clam.
Yeah, we do have a genetic marker that we can see if they are our clams that are out there now. So we'll be able to actually tell if there are clams, no matter who's been planting them. And we have a lot of projects around the area, up and down the Indian River Lagoon, that get their clams from the same growers that we do.
Thank you.
Dan.
Yeah, I just want to add that the council has funded this project through the University of Florida Whitney Lab for 4 years, just about $600,000 total towards this project. Todd has final reports, and you can find them on KJ's project map. And there is some great data on nutrient uptake. So there is some nutrient uptake estimate data from these clams that Todd has posted in his final report. So if anybody's really interested in getting some more info from the first few years of this project, you can find them on our project list.
Thank you. You must know Mike Sullivan.
Oh yeah, very well. He's our main supplier of clams.
I didn't know you were first. I'm going to be with Mike, I think, next Wednesday.
I'll be there.
And you'll be there?
Yeah.
Great.
The
And
drone's flying off of my boat, probably.
I think Dr. Osborne as well.
Yeah.
To do another drone delivery. It's an
incredible site.
It's a great technology.
And the reason for the drone is because of the density population. What we're doing with the drone now is trying to overcome the predation out there that we have. The Florida crown conchs are devastating the clam beds, along with everything else that likes to eat clams, including us. And what we're trying to do is overcome the predation out there. And what we're doing is releasing so many clams out there that by the time they do reach adulthood, we're reaching about the same percentage of survival as we do when we hand plant and cover up the clam beds. So we don't put any protection on the clams at all when we're putting them out there now with the drone. But it's just a lot of clams. So we're overcoming all the predation. We're giving them a 9-month head start basically on life. When they're little veligers, everything from minnows to other creatures the same size are eating these veligers. But when they do get the hard shell, their survival rate goes way up. So wherever we're putting these out, their survival rate's just 9-month head start on life.
Interesting. I'll look forward to seeing you there. Did he set a final date, Tuesday or Wednesday?
Not yet. I'm still waiting for it myself.
so-
I think we're looking at Thursday.
Okay,
Is the last I heard of it.
good. You mentioned horseshoe crabs. On 2 weeks ago, I was on the West Coast, and we took a boat was from Largo, Clearwater area. Just went out to an island that we go to and dock out. There's usually hundreds of horseshoe crabs. We didn't see any. Does anybody are you seeing that anywhere, Doug?
I'm seeing, I dive a lot in the Keys. I've seen a lot of horseshoe crabs and a lot of conch. Conch's made a big comeback in the Florida Keys, thankfully. I didn't see any conch 30 years ago, hardly anywhere. The blowboaters got what was left. But now, everywhere I dive, I'm seeing horseshoe crabs, conch. I'm seeing a lot of positives, finally, with that. But I was curious about your comment about conch in the Banana River.
They're Florida crown conchs. They don't get but about 4 inches long, and they're devastating. They will eventually, they'll come over a clam and eventually open it up and get inside of it and eat the clam. That's why you see a lot of clams when they're opened up, that they're eaten by a crown conch or even a starfish.
They're eating my clams.
Yes, they're eating our clams.
Yeah, the
My goal is one day to hopefully go back out in the river and, have a nice day fishing, go to the island, grab a few clams off the, out of the river, go back and have a nice clam
Yeah.
bake like we used to do when I was a
Absolutely.
kid. And, people that move here just now, they don't have a baseline, basically. Even if the past 20 years, you don't have a baseline of what it was like here back in the 70s and 80s before really things started declining. I watched the oyster dredgers come in bringing 12 barges behind one boat, and they took every oyster, or almost every oyster, out of the Banana River and took them back down south to the very southern end of Brevard County because you couldn't transfer oysters over county lines back then. But they came up and basically took it down to a point of non-sustainability. Still had a few oysters left, but the Florida crown conchs and the starfish and everything that we had in the water at the time devastated the oyster beds, and they just could not recover. I got to see this from, this big up to the old guy like I am now. But any other questions?
No, thank you for coming
Thanks.
in.
I will give you an update. Anybody wants to learn about it, I do have pamphlets back here with me that I'll hand out. It's about the Billion Clam Initiative. And anybody that wants to see anything about the Indian River Clam Project, you can go to Indian River Clam Restoration Project .org and find out about it. But I'll have pamphlets for everybody. But
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That was timely. Executive Director's Report, Dr. DeFries.
When we look at restoration, before I go on, and I remember getting here in '78 and coming from Long Island, big area for commercial clamming, and us kids used to make a few bucks all the time. I was just unbelievably impressed with the bivalves, the oysters, that you could make $500 a day just treading. We have come a long way in the wrong way when it comes to some of these commercial fishing issues. You asked about horseshoe crabs. I was talking to Charlie Sembler here in town. He was talking to his dad, Charlie Sr., and he was recollecting seeing hundreds of thousands of mating horseshoe crabs up towards Kennedy Space Center. And so when you get unstable like this, and really it's water quality is key. So getting this back is going to be exactly what we're doing with DEP and the water management districts, whether it's infrastructure or stormwater. If we can get the water quality back, then of course the work that Blair and his team and all the projects we do have this opportunity for success. And then one last thing, we look at progress by, how many acres of seagrass, how many millions of clams. What we don't talk about a lot is this volunteer workforce. We have now created here at the council, not within just our management conference, which is now over 100 individuals, but we have created a community of restoration practice along the lagoon that is not hundreds of people, it's thousands of citizens, students, mostly volunteers, whether it's Brevard Zoo, Marine Resources, the Marine Discovery Center, Florida Oceanographic Society, doing exactly what Captain Wiggins and his team is doing. They are out there working side by side with professionals like Todd Osborne, doing the hard work. That is an economic and workforce development story that almost never gets told because they're volunteers. And it's something that we need to think about a little bit in the bigger picture when we have these conversations about, is there enough money to do this work each year? There's an inherent return on investment value in this workforce. It's partly private sector. There's a lot of old commercial, clammers that are now doing restoration commercial clamming. We've got our aquaculture facilities, our 5 seagrass nurseries. We're building a workforce and we're building infrastructure, and we don't talk enough about the economic value of that. So just wanted to say that. I'm not going to go through everything on here. We've already talked about the hard work that was done both at the House and the Senate, and I really want to thank Glenn, our legal counsel. We spent a lot of time, especially over on the House side, with staffers. And so super thanks to the staff at Senator Altman's office and Representative Altman's office, Senator Wright's office. You can't do this in the day-to-day interaction with committees and amendments without having staff keeping you fully informed, sometimes changes every day. So I want to also add my thanks. I want to talk about a couple of things, though, that are bigger issues. First and foremost, when we talk about money, and I love having enough money to do the work we do, I want to thank the governor again. We had another historic year of funding, and once this budget's passed, if you look at the governor's website, we are at the $100 million mark for state funding for the Indian River Lagoon program. We're also seeing really strong bipartisan support at the federal level. So many of you know each year we usually interact when we're up in Washington with the House Congressional Estuary Caucus. And that caucus is represented, it's a bipartisan caucus. We have Brian Mast, Congressman Mast, and Congressman Posey on the Republican side as co-chairs. And we have Representative Larson and Representative Bonamici out on the West Coast on the Democratic side. Over the last 2 weeks, and we engage very actively with the Association of National Estuary Programs to help them circulate the caucus. It's called a Dear Colleague letter. And the Dear Colleague letter this year that went out to the House membership was requesting full funding for the National Estuary Program as authorized, and with a target of what we have been asking for here, at least $1 million per NEP, which is well within that authorized amount. And I'm really excited to say we broke a record this year. 88 House members, bipartisan support, signed that letter. On the Senate side, we'll see less engagement on the numbers, but that is circulating as we speak, and it goes to show the strong bipartisan support we have for this program, partly because, we are delivering on those federal and state dollars, and you see that in our annual report. You see it with the fiscal accountability that Dan provides us, and we'll continue that engagement as we move forward. A couple other items that are worth mentioning. As we move forward, we're going to start looking at our CCMP. Kind of hard to believe, we passed that in 2019, and we're beginning to look at some updates so we can do a 5-year update. That'll be coming up as we move forward. We're working on a One Lagoon habitat restoration plan. I think I've mentioned this before. The holdup on that is me. It just hasn't been where I think it needs to be, but my goal is to try to get that out and moving forward, through our conference over the next couple of meetings. And then lastly, a bit of new news. You've been briefed by Keith Winston at Brevard Zoo, the $100 million aquarium project. Well, very pertinent to both what we're doing with DEP and looking at monitoring and the needs for research, the Science 2030 document, which you adopted today. The Brevard Zoo Board of Directors have entered into a memorandum of agreement with Florida Institute of Technology to create a consortia for aquarium research and education that is in its very early stages of what is this going to look like, who are going to be the players, but the goal is to literally start to build a research consortia around the work that we do. And I've talked with the new president of FIT, John Nicolau, offered our services and our support. We've got a strong STEM AC committee, and almost anybody who's working on the lagoon is already engaged with us. So we're going to do everything we can to make sure that research consortia moves forward. It's not an easy thing to build a consortia and hold it together. And some of this is going to be, dependent on funding. You can't get there. And so I'm already starting to look at different federal, state programs on, where do you find money to build the human infrastructure of science and technology? And then lastly, you will see at some point as we move forward, our friends up at Space Florida have released a report. We've had a lot of phone calls, some of you may in the future, about the future of Port Canaveral and the need for expanding wharf. I know DEP has been looking at some of this and having conversations. We'll keep you posted, but this is one of the biggest infrastructure potential projects that we've probably seen in decades in order to support the expansion of Kennedy Space Center and what will be maybe 300 plus launches a year. So a lot of changes are happening, both in the development side, the economic development side, and we'll make sure that we stay, in tune with our partners and our communities. And then lastly, Aaron, you may bring this up, but the DEP portal for fiscal year 24-25, it's open, right? So as of last week, it is open. So even though we don't have a budget yet, formally, in law, those of you who represent nonprofits or especially municipalities, start getting your projects ready, because that'll be a short timeline when the budget actually hits, and now's the time. Like Commissioner Zadofsky said, the flow of money is never forever, and we have more money on the street at state and federal levels than I've ever seen in my career, and I'm just encouraging all of our partners, don't think this is going to last forever. Take advantage of the available dollars that we have right now to do the work we need to do. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'll just open for questions.
Questions from council? I guess you were perfect.
And on a personal note, thank you all for your support over the last few weeks. I'm glad I'm here. We'll see you in August, I hope.
It's good to see you. All right, with that, we will go to council comments. And why don't we start with Rob Feltner from Brevard first, and then we'll move this way.
All right, I got an update that Virginia Barker sent me with on the status of the Save Our Indian River Lagoon project plan. I can read this in 2 minutes. Work completed this quarter. The 2024 Save Our Indian River Lagoon project plan update was approved by the County Commission. Leaky lateral repairs, 662 of 691. Code enforcement cases for detected private sewer leaks repaired. Quick connects to existing sewer, 83 more connections completed with reimbursements processed. South Central C septic to sewer, 56 of 149 homeowner connections completed. Miko sewer line extension, 96% complete. Final section of force main installed for marina, preparing for lift station startup. And then send connection notifications property owners. Septic upgrades, 34 more upgrades completed with reimbursements processed. Sandpoint Park baffle box installation complete. Brevard County's vegetative harvesting of aquatic weeds contract complete. Derelict vessels removed, 11. Titusville Causeway multi-tropic restoration and living shoreline resiliency bid and awarded. 2 clammers seeded 500,000 clams each into their aquaculture lease areas. Seagrass and oyster restoration resilience project bid and awarded to plant 1.5 acres of seagrass. University of Central Florida conducted 3-month monitoring at the Rainwater Oyster Bar, finding an estimated 2,500 to 4,800 oysters per square meter, with 4.5 to 7% having reached reproductive size. 6-month monitoring at Rainwater Oyster Bar, finding an estimated 2,050 to 3,700 oysters per square meter, with about 25% having reached reproductive size. And 18-month monitoring at the Castaway Cove Oyster Bar, finding an estimated 1,144 oysters per square meter, with 60% having reached reproductive size. 2024 federal appropriation awards, $1.4 million for septic upgrades and $1.7 million for O'Galley muck removal. 25 federal appropriations requested funds for quick connects and Site Creeks muck removal. That's it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Doug?
Yeah, I don't have much, but on Thursday, South Florida Water Management District met in Stewart, as I mentioned earlier, and the night before Wednesday, they had a reception forum at the Oceanographic Society on Hutchinson Island. I'd never been there, and Kathy LaMartina put a gun to my head and said, "You better go." So I did, and it was a very nice event, but the I guess you call it an aquarium / lagoon exhibit they have there is really first class. If you guys are ever traveling through Stewart, pull in there and take a look at that. The lagoon aquarium project they have there is phenomenal. So just a tip of the hat to that Florida Oceanographic for what they've done there is phenomenal. And Kathy, thanks for forcing me to go. So.
Thank you. Stacy?
I love to follow that because I love when somebody puts a nice plug in for Martin County, and FOS has been a great partner with Martin County. So it is a phenomenal, and we've done a great public partner, private partnership with them. So thanks for putting that plug in. And Captain Wiggins made me think of something when he was up here talking, and as Kathy always talks about our community engagement and our outreach, and 1,000 people or more are moving to Florida every day. And I think, in addition to the projects and things that we do here at Indian River Lagoon Council, one of the most important functions that we serve is educating and community outreach. Because you think about it as the native Floridians and the generational families that have grown up here, we do have a baseline. We do understand the importance and the significance of the Indian River Lagoon. And those folks from moving from out of state, it's really very important to advocate and educate and have them understand the significance and the importance. And as then local government electeds and staff, when we are trying to put together infrastructure and stormwater, water quality programs and projects, it's that much more important that our public understands the end of the day, these are important for our natural lagoons. So again, I think some of the most important work that we do here is all the education and outreach that we do. So I give our staff kudos because we do a lot. And I see a lot of people moving here that are starting to understand the importance of it that are not native Floridians. So thank you for that. And then on the infrastructure and stormwater, Martin County has really invested a lot of time, money, and energy in our septic to sewer program with a 10-year, 10,000 tank removal. We just completed a project in my district that converted over 780 vacuum on a vacuum sewer system. Of that, it was just completed at the beginning of the year. We've got about 70% of people that have connected in that neighborhood. So we're finding really creative and good ways to help our last leg connections. And our next project will be Old Palm City, which will be about 800 units. And we're finding that it's certainly becoming competitive and harder to find contractors, and they're super busy. So we hope that we'll continue to see a competitive market as these contractors bid these projects. But we've got Old Palm City with 800 systems coming off, and then following that will be Coral Gardens back in my district again with over 700 tanks coming off. So we're excited about that. And then we also have our board with some advocacy from our local groups has approved a referendum to go on the November ballot. It's a sales tax, half-cent sales tax to acquire land and preservation and conservation easements. So that will go on the November ballot in Martin County. It'll be a 10-year half-cent sales tax. So look for that. They will be, obviously, the Martin County cannot advocate for that, but there will be groups providing information, and you'll see that on the November ballot. So thank you.
What's your current sales tax rate?
We have a 6.5% sales tax, yes. But we don't have anything on the books for land acquisition or preservation.
Okay. Joe Ehrman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We got quite a few things going, but first I may even ask them to come up. I want to recognize our staff here, two of our members of our staff, Eric Cherish, our interim natural resources director, and Melissa Meisenberg, our lagoon specialist, who just became a member of one of our boards here. They're here today, so I may ask them to come up after I finish a little bit because I know I'll forget something because we have a lot of things going on in Indian River County. One thing we just talked about, I so agree with my friend, a good friend, and longtime friend, Mr. Bernique. I think we're making some headway. I think we need to keep full steam ahead and move ahead on what we're doing and do more. I wasn't as optimistic about the lagoon, and that was one thing that prompted me to run for office back in 2020 was to do some stuff. But I think we're edging forward, and I'm happy to see that. But we got to stay on top of it. We can lose it faster than we gained it. That's for sure. So with that, you know, I too, born and raised in Indian River County, third generation, fifth generation Floridian. I've seen the lagoon back when I was a teenager out on the boat doing things I probably shouldn't have done to where it's changed now in my day. And one of the things that troubles me is those stills we're not seeing the species of fish such as the trout and stuff that's more abundant in the river. And the reason I know this, because I don't get to fish as much as I used to, but a lot of my good friends are fishing guides on the Indian River Lagoon, and they fill me in all the time when we see each other, for dinner or out at an event or something like that, and they keep me fishing. So I would tell you all that the good source of your information is your local fishermen and your local fishing guides. For each of you to know what's going on out there in the lagoon, they're on it every day, so they know what's going on. One of the other things we have going on, we talked about it the other day, it got postponed a little bit, was our anchoring regulations in the Indian River Lagoon. We're working with the city of Sebastian, Indian River Shores, and the city of Vero Beach to identify proper anchoring locations within the Indian River Lagoon, and it's still a work in progress, and it's coming back to the board for probably in the next month or so after our staff works on getting a few more answers out there as to what we're going to do with that. We have been working hard on septic to sewer. We finished an area up here in Roseland on the Sebastian River for lagoon for septic to sewer, where I forget how many houses we converted over there. We got a lot of help from the St. Johns River Water Management District and other financial sources to bring the cost down, because as you all know, that's it's going to be pricey, and with the 2030 deadline and all that sort of stuff, we're working hard, and I know it's something that's going to be tough to do. So I'm sure the state will work with us on that, but we are working hard on it. Our next project is at Hobart Landing, if you're familiar with that. It's about midway in Indian River County. If you're driving down US 1, it's obvious it's on the lagoon side, and but that's our next project for septic to sewer conversions as we're doing that. We have added, we're going to add some staff to our natural resource department. 2 more people are becoming on board with that, so we're looking forward to that. And Commissioner Hedrick talked about what they're doing to buy conservation land. Well, if you know, I told you back in 2022, we passed a $50 million land bond by almost 80% of the vote. And we are in the process now. I'm the commission board liaison on that board, and we have a website up on our Indian River County website. If y'all want to take a look, if you're interested, just type in ELAP or Environmental Lands Acquisition Panel, and it'll come up with that. But right now we have almost 20 properties that have been nominated to look at purchasing for conservation land. Now the weird thing is that anybody can nominate a property. Like if I wanted to, I could nominate your house if you lived in Indian River County, but that's okay, because if we could talk to the landowner, do you want to sell your property, even though it was nominated by somebody else? So, but it all works out in the end. But we've got almost 20 properties that have been nominated. We're hoping we can leverage our money with grants and additional funding, so that 50 million, because 50 million doesn't go as far as today as it went a few years ago. So we're hoping we can leverage it with grant monies from different agencies throughout the state and the federal government. But we do have 20 properties. We have some really good nominated property that I'm sure that we'll end up purchasing in the future. And so we're real excited about that. So if you don't mind, if there's anything I've forgotten, I would ask the staff that came up here to talk about some stuff. I know Melissa's been working hard on derelict vessel removal and all that sort of stuff, but if you would.
Sure. So Melissa Meisenberg, Senior Lagoon Environmental Specialist for Indian River County Natural Resources. I think you really covered most of it. The only thing I would add is we've been working on a muck study with Austin Fox in Indian River County. And so he's finished the first 3 tasks and we'll soon begin tasks 4 and 5, which will really give us a good idea of where the muck is and the nutrients or legacy load within the muck that's in Indian River County. We'll hopefully move forward with projects to handle that muck once we know better, and also will guide our restoration efforts within the lagoon and our region so that we know exactly where it's a prime area for maybe seagrass plantings or for putting clams or oyster restoration as well. We recently completed 4 derelict vessel removals, and we just had another 9 released to us from FWC, so we're moving forward on quotes with those, and we'll get moving on getting those out as well.
Thank you.
Good morning. Eric Charis, the Interim Natural Resource Director for Indian River County. The only thing I do want to add to what Melissa and Commissioner Ehrman has said was that the county has also had our kickoff meeting with a stormwater management plan. The county has selected a consultant to work with us, which will identify areas within the county potentially for additional treatment of the stormwater before it hits the lagoon, as well as additional flooding concerns and so forth. So as stormwater is a significant contributor to the lagoon, we're looking forward to moving this project forward. So I think that's pretty much it to tie on. So.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. That was a lot.
That was a great report. Aaron Watkins.
Good deal. I want to echo what Dwayne said about recognizing the historic, and he used that word, and it's a correct word to use, historic investment by the legislature and governor's office in protecting the environment. It really is tremendous. Regarding DEP, it's been a very busy legislative session, and I want to commend all the work by staff and leadership across DEP for this legislative session. They've been working really hard on some big bills, House Bill 1557 and Senate Bill 1386, which is the DEP agency bill that covers everything from coral reef and aquatic preserves, improving treatment of reclaimed water, resilience planning, innovative technology, expanding wastewater facility plans, as well as furthering on-site septic program transfer. So big effort, and kudos to them for that work. Also been very busy on rulemaking updates to 62-330, which updates stormwater rules and design criteria. And then lastly, I had cards. Dwayne had mentioned the funding portal. I had really awesome cards, and I left them on my desk. So it's a one-stop shop to go to. I will get those and the link to Kathy to then get to folks, both us here, but also Kathy, everyone out there looking. It's really a good portal and a hub of all the funding resources that DEP has, and we're really proud of that. And I forgot my cards, so sorry about that. That's all I got.
Okay. Libby Pigman.
Hi. So, yes, Mr. Bornick, we did have the meeting in Martin County yesterday. We had our governing board meeting there, and we've started doing kind of moving our board meetings around a couple times a year because we cover 16 counties, and it goes Orlando all the way to the Keys, and so we've started having those meetings in the community. And kind of just giving our board a chance to interact with the stakeholders, talk about projects that are important to those communities, and we're really enjoying it. I'm glad we were able to be in Martin County because, of course, Martin County is so environmentally minded, and they just really participated, and we want to recognize all the work that they've done in their community as good partners as well. So thank you for that. So as part of that, we did a C44 site visit of our reservoir and STA. We're getting ready to open up the recreational features of the C44 STA. So that was one of the things that we discussed with the people who went on the site visit. And of course, Kathy is our resource, the external affairs specialist for Treasure Coast area. So she knows all about that. And Kathy did a great job with coordinating those events. So thank you, Kathy. We had the reception at Florida Oceanographic Society, and Mark Perry and his team were great to accommodate that. And then the governing board meeting, which was very well attended. So very happy about that. But as a follow-up to that, on May 21st, at 5 o'clock, we are going to be hosting a community meeting on the Indian River Lagoon South projects. That's in Fort Pierce at the Kite Center at IRSC. And then the same meeting on May 22nd at 1 o'clock at Stewart City Hall. And this is another project that our communications team has been working on. We're getting out into the communities where we've got the projects, and we're bringing the team. And so the community members, we're going to have some posters. There's no set agenda. It's just posters. It's an open house for people to be able to come and interact with the different scientists who are working and engineers working on those projects and ask questions. And we've been really excited by the level of interest that we've had, and also the kind of complexity of the technical questions that we're getting from community members when we bring those presentations to them in their communities. So looking forward to that. And then also we had an open house in April at the district to present the South Florida Environmental Report, which is now available on our website. That is a very large report. It's 3 volumes. We have a smaller highlights if you want to check that out. But we're very proud of that publication. And that is my report.
Thank you. Chris?
All right. First, I'd like to thank Kathy in South Florida for the invitation to come to the event in Treasure Coast. The unfortunate part is, not unlike each of you in the counties, your board meetings are being filled up with developer projects and so on and so forth. Ours happened to have probably 7 major issues, of which 4 were contentious. So I was unable to come to the event, and then we had planned 2 days to get our meeting over. So I was conflicted out, and I was very sad that I wasn't able to attend. So I apologize for not being there. It's one of those, why now? Anyway, so I wanted to raise that. I want to recognize Indian River and Martin County for their efforts on environmentally significant lands efforts in preservation and conservation. As a matter of fact, that meeting that evening had an area where the residents were concerned about taking down, some old native trees and so on and so forth. And St. Lucie County fights and works really hard to maintain our tree canopies and our environmental issues, our stormwater efforts, and so on and so forth. We encourage development to actually have conservation and preservation elements in their plans if they're large plans. And in this one, it was only 33 acres, so they kept 10% of their acreage in preservation and conservation. But the residents were unhappy with the idea that this particular property was going to have a significant number of, well, not the invasives, they're going to come out anyway, but there would be some changes. So as I do in every time we have a development that comes through, I raise the issue about the environmentally significant lands bonds that we did in 1990s. $20 million was set aside over 20 years, of which over $70 million in value of properties have been saved. 3,300 acres on North Beach, 3,200 on South Beach, and then a number of areas throughout the Indian River Groves, the Savannas, Pinelands. South Florida is working with us for another access off of 70 for one of our major preservation areas. So again, thank you for that. Drew's been excellent, just so you know, that he's been very communicative with us and trying to assist us and work out options and opportunities. So all of those things I bring up because I still want St. Lucie County to move forward with an environmentally significant lands bond. We're never going to stop development from coming, and if we don't own it, we can't preserve it. It's going to be that situation, that balance that we have to try and find. The unfortunate part about St. Lucie County is we've lost our citrus, and Doug, you know this to be true. Is there was a time we were doing 40 million boxes of citrus. We're down to about 400,000 now, so it's a very de minimis process, and so we're in a situation now where all of our old groves are now being looked at because they don't have to clear trees. They don't have to do much more than just start digging. So we're under pressure that way, and St. Lucie County is on that frontier. So we're having those battles, and our public is not happy about it. The challenge is, if you're a farmer and you can't farm, what do you do? So those are the tough decisions that we make as county commissioners and city commissioners and councils. So it's a hard balance, and of course we know that the state of Florida engaged in the 80s with our comprehensive plan process, the planning decisions, the legal aspects of it, and that public property rights is a big issue for the state of Florida. There are only 2 times where you set 12 jurors. One is capital murder, and the other one is a planning issue, a taking. So admittedly, each of us from the county government side of things are under pressure, and folks don't understand some of that issue. But I try to educate the community wherever I am on these types of things. It's not we just want to say no. We don't want to say yes to everything. And just saying no for no reason is not an option. So I say this today, and the folks at home look at this because most of the people that are interested in this are environmentally concerned. And so while that's issue, I know that what I've been doing for over 45 years of my life as an activist in managing and pushing environmental issues, that has been one of my stalwart things, is to try and protect the environment. So as a commissioner and being under pressure, whatever these developments are coming through that I have an opportunity to have an impact on, I try to find the best possible outcome from the environmental side of things, and that'll never change for me. So that being said, going on to Oxbow Earth Day, I'd like to thank all the volunteers. We had hundreds of volunteers at the Oxbow, and all the presenters. Khalid, you were there. A number of you were there. The presenters were amazing. I mean, we had hundreds of presenters. And I think we're now, this year, over 10,000 visitors, 10,000. That's a pretty amazing number of visitors for that type of situation. Fort Pierce Utilities Authority is moving the wastewater plant off of South Beach. Again, thank you to South Florida and FDEP for your help on that. If you're interested to watch the progress, they have Water Wednesdays on Facebook. So they just take an update as what's happening at the wastewater plant, where they're building it, and they're making significant progress, and we're hoping to see that come through sooner than later. The Board of County Commissioners on Tuesday night approved the Municipal Services Boundary Unit for the North Beach area. Again, this is a septic to sewer project, and thank you to FDEP and EPA, actually, for helping us with getting that, and the council for its funding of that process moving forward. It's interesting that we have been able to cover approximately 85% of the cost for the individual home property, and we still had folks were upset that we had to move that forward. And it's like, you don't understand. We try to explain back to the history and back to education, is that in 2030, everything changes. And if you're living on the beach, you should be interested in trying to move that forward for yourself and participate. So again, FDP let us move forward. We know that one of the communities, I'm not going to name them, one of the communities opted out simply because they wouldn't give us the easement to run the lines. So if we don't have the legal ability to run the lines, we can't service them. My fear for them in the next few years is that they're going to have to foot the bill by themselves unless significant more money comes, in 6 or 8 years. Again, we know that funding comes in cycles, and my fear is that we'll be out of that cycle. So we've tried to explain that and educate the folks about the value of having these grants. When I took office originally, there were no grants available, and even if there were, we didn't have any money to match. So it's a different time, and so it's my hope is that folks that are hearing this and that are paying attention in their communities is look at the bigger picture, ask more questions, get a better understanding as to what's happening around you, because it can benefit you greatly. That said, Joe, I want to talk to you about offline the Anchor project. We are engaging in that as well. And so I think it would be wise for our counties to work together because the connection that clearly is there, that whatever is coming forward, that we participate and kind of make a consistency process for each county. I think it just makes sense. So if you're open to that, I'll reach out to you offline and have our staff talk to your staff so we can, kind of bring that two together. There's a TV star in the audience today. Her name is Kathy Hill. She joined me on Inside St. Lucie this month for my television show, and she was spectacular. Are you getting autographs now, or what's happening? Or no, not yet. Oh, okay.
Asking too much money for that autograph.
So if you have a chance, go St. Lucie County's website, communications, Inside St. Lucie. It's actually one of the longer shows that we've ever done, and we're getting a lot of folks with good comments, and really excited to have that update from the council. And that's it for me. I think that's it. Thank you very much. Oh, I take it back. As we were talking about funding and so on and so forth, it's been on my mind that could we look into a process to have a benefactor program, meaning that for folks that want the Lagoon to be successful and so on, there are folks who may not have family members left and they don't have anybody to leave their worldly goods to, and it might be an opportunity for them to actually participate and have some kind of a bequeathment, what the word is, benefactor for the Lagoon. It could be an area that we recognize them in some way. So just a thought process that we could look into and see if there's an opportunity to have that as an option for folks that might want to participate and support the Lagoon. Now I'm done.
Thank you. Good, a lot of good information here. Several of you have mentioned, I thought we lost him, development, and I guess for every county that is a significant topic of debate amongst the councils. I know for me it's campaign season, so I'm out with the public a lot. But for the last 3 years, in talking with the public, what I hear is stop, just stop it. And I keep trying to tell them right now there's not the political will for it. We're not going to stop growth, but we have to do it more responsibly, especially around our important waterways, the St. Johns River, the Lagoon, our springs. And so I think the pendulum has swung greatly with the public, that they want to do something about the way that we're developing. And so the politicians are going to have to catch up, and we'll see. This election for me will tell me a lot about it. One of the things that, in fact, our county staff, the person that's in charge of, it's called resource management, but zoning and land changes, he came to me and said, we really need to do something to protect our agriculture lands. The council's got to tell us, how do we protect ag lands, because a lot of those are around the Lagoon and the St. Johns. And rather than going to the half-cent sales tax, we created a program called Volusia Forever, which is a very small millage rate on property taxes, but it's raising millions and millions of dollars. And with that, it's a willing seller program. You've got to be willing to sell your land. We can't go take it from you. Wouldn't do that. One of the prime members of the community that are taking part in that is ag land, agricultural landholders whose kids aren't interested in farming anymore. They've taken off. They're, bankers and lawyers and whatever. But the parents love the land and they want it preserved. And so we're able to purchase that land at fair market value. For many of the farmers, we just purchase the development rights. They get to keep their property, run their farms, pay their property taxes, but that property will never be developed. It's in perpetuity. So it's been a very effective program, combined with the Volusia Conservation Corridor and the Wildlife Corridor. We're making progress in buying land, and an interesting thing has happened. I've had very, very conservative people call me that used to complain, you're buying all this land up that we need to develop to get more tax money on. Now they're calling and saying, buy as much land as you possibly can because that's the only way we're slowing down this massive development. So for me, that's encouraging. Just a couple quick things that we're doing. Several of you have mentioned derelict vessels. I guess that's a problem throughout the state of Florida. It's puzzling. We are working on that as well and making progress. To the man in the back that spoke with us, I am meeting with Mike Sullivan to do this drone aerial attack to plant oysters or to plant clams. We're really encouraged with what most of the leases that we're going to work on are in Edgewater, Oak Hill. And we're really encouraged with the water quality there. We're seeing changes. However, there's still a lot of algae in the water. There's hardly any sunlight getting through. So we have a private project going up there that Mike is helping me with, a BioRock project. We're seeing oyster and clam growth, but very slow seagrass growth, which is what we're really hoping to see. And Mike says, don't worry about it. It's not going to grow without sun getting there, and the water is so dark that in 3 foot of water, we're just not getting the sun, 24 inches to 36 inches of water. So we're hoping to see. We'll check it this week or this Thursday, hoping to see some improvement there. We've got a project going on the North Peninsula, the very northern end of the Indian River Lagoon in Ormond Beach. This is really an important part of the lagoon because it's the extreme north, and we're so far between the two inlets, we don't get a lot of flushing. So we have severe problems there at times. And another very important river, the Tomoka River, feeds into the lagoon at that point. But we have just passed exfiltration system that will go in there, the Buckingham Drive exfiltration. We're going to be replacing a concrete pipe with this exfiltration, install a weir structure in the downstream end, and clean up the water with a nutrient separating baffle box. At the last council meeting this Tuesday, we approved another baffle box project that's really important. But I am looking forward, and I hope this will work out, that we're able to get Jesse to come up to Volusia County at this location at the extreme northern end in Ormond Beach, because when I go up there and talk about the lagoon, they don't know what I'm talking about. You mean the Halifax River? And I said, yeah, it's part of the Indian River Lagoon, and what we do here affects everybody else. So I'm looking forward to getting Jesse up there and in that part of the county. And what you said is so true, that what we do in educating the public makes all the difference in the world. So Jesse, come on. We're still working on septic to sewer projects, and with great success. A lot of that is help from the governor and the state of Florida. We really appreciate that. And then the last thing I'll mention is the Living Docks program, where we've selecting docks along the lagoon, wrapping them with a material that has oyster shells on it to try and attract new oysters to grow there, and it's working. So I'll continue to update you on that, but I'm really looking forward to getting on the lagoon on Thursday, seeing the quality of the water. The last time we were there, which is about 6 weeks ago, we checked clams, and the growth had been amazing. In just a few minutes, the guy that got out of the boat to check stood up, and he had a whole bag of just perfect clams. And I'll tell you, I don't know the answer, Chris, to what you had asked about what do the clams retain. One of the guys on the boat has, I guess it's just a theory, but he said there are no impurities in the meat of the clam. The clam breaks it down to elements, excretes it in ways that aren't toxic. So when you're eating the meat, you're not getting any of the. I said, I hope that's true, but I would like to see the verification of it. So I want it to be true. But what they are doing, do you know?
Well, for our commercial shellfish industry, they are watched very closely, both internally and externally, between FDACS and also Department of Health. When we have algal blooms, you know, there are some toxins that will shut down some of that fishery. That bioluminescent summer bloom we have with pyrodinium can cause paralytic shellfish poisoning. So the really good news is that, you know, we are on top of that as a state of Florida on the regulatory side. In the industry, the last thing anybody in the shellfish industry wants is anybody to get sick. It's bad for business. But again, clean water is the way to go on this. We also, I hate to say this, but for the moment, we're kind of at a record level of microplastics. So UCF has looked at oysters up in Mosquito Lagoon, and microplastics are a problem. And so again, you know, it's all about water quality. Reduce the pollutants at the source, get water quality right, and our fish and shellfish, it will be safe to eat. And the further we go away from that, the more human health challenges we have. But thankfully, the state of Florida is on top of our industry.
Yes, good. Well, the good news is, to end with, is that we are seeing, all of us are seeing progress on the lagoon, north to south. We're not there yet. We're not done. We got to keep going. So I want to commend this council for the work that we do, but especially to all of you that sit out there, the staff here for the IRL. You're doing amazing work. The projects are making a tremendous impact on the water quality of the lagoon, and it's just important that we are able to keep the funding up and keep going. So thank you all for what you do. And if there's nothing else, the next IRL council meeting will be August 23rd, 2024 at 9:30 right here. And nothing else, we'll adjourn. Thank you.